Hey everyone, welcome to the Regenerative Relationship Podcast. My name is Melissa and I'm your host. I'm doing something a little different today. I'm recording a video intro to go along with an interview I did with Kyson Dana. And Kyson is a brand designer by trade. We work together at Rivian. I haven't spoken with him in a few years, and so this conversation was part catch up and part deep dive into some topics that might feel sensitive, particularly around suicide and suicidal ideation. I originally wanted to have a conversation with Kyson about patriarchy, which is kind of my thing right now. I'm trying to have as many conversations with men about this topic as I can. And it is kind of that, but that's more in the background. And what comes forward is more a discussion about existentialism and, this time and how to find, how to carve out some comfort in these sort of uncertain times. And so suicide was the main theme because both of our lives have been touched by this topic. And, I think a lot of people are experiencing uncertainty and suffering, and that can end up being the, you know, option that people turn to. And so I really want to start talking about this topic a little bit more openly because I think there's a prevention strategy in there. And I don't have all the answers. In fact, I think I'm just about to, open up a new aspect of this exploration in my own personal experience. So far, I've just been, in the years since my mom passed away, my grief has sort of surfaced as a lot of instability, ups and downs. For the most part, I think I've done a lot of really solid healing in the emotional realm and getting myself to a place of like emotional congruence. But the ways that trauma is showing up in my life today are around financial instability um, and just trying to get to the core of that. And, you know, I've spent the last year feeling really shameful about it because I've taken it on as a reflection of my own abilities. And then recently I've really just come to meet it as a trauma response, which is more of what it feels like in my body and in my life is just something is unresolved there around security and safety and the ability to manifest that in a meaningful way. And so, and I'm speaking specifically financially about that, um, but I'm working on it and you know, I've been able to hold it out a little bit more and relate to it in a more compassionate way. But, the things I would love for people to take away from this conversation are that, I think a lot of what could help people in this scenario and also people who love people who are in a dark place is just to create some greater social fabric that doesn't allow people to fall through the cracks as frequently. And so to me, what that looks like is cultivating what I would consider like an emotional first aid kit, being able to scan the room for people who, feel left out, having the tools to work with someone who's in distress and be able to ask the right questions and, you know, be in the meantime before getting to more professional help. It looks like things like providing non-judgmental, compassionate space. That was something, I've had many different, phases of this, creating stability in my own life. But there was a time where I was very emotionally checked out, and the thing that really helped me come back into myself was, having family that provided a space that was non-judgmental and they didn't take on my problems necessarily, but they didn't shame me for them or look down on me for them. And that was such a key aspect to being able to, you know, find some footing, I guess, so that I could build myself back up. Um, and they've done that for me again in this other dip that I'm having right now, which is less emotional and mental and more financial, material, physical. So again, both times my family has just provided such a beautiful space for me to be and figure it out. And I wish that for anyone who's going through this. And I think that's why this conversation is so important, is because, if you don't have those resources around family, community is the resource. And so I didn't have my family near me when I lived in California. I went through a pretty big dip at one point, and I didn't find the same level of support there that I did in Colorado. And so that's not to say I didn't have supportive people in my life. I did. I had several of them, and I want to thank them specifically because they really helped, create a bridge. Um, but it didn't feel as tight knit as it perhaps could have been. And that's what I wish for our society and our cultures, that we can create those close knit, um, that close knit safe social safety fabric among strangers and among people that aren't in our immediate family or friend groups. And so with that, I'll just let us get into the conversation here with Kyson. But that's my main ask, is that we all work to cultivate, what I would consider like an emotional skills first aid kit, similar to knowing CPR. How do we scan the room for people who might feel left out? How do we, you know, learn how to respond to someone who's in distress um, in the moment before they can get more robust professional help? And how do we just in general bring these conversations out into the open so that they don't feel so shameful, which is, I think, part of what contributes to this cycle. And so that's kind of where my work is concentrated, and that's what I'm interested in doing, is supporting the professional mental health uh, practice and community with just human, human first aid and care that exists in more community spaces, such as an open dialogue in a podcast, or um, there's lots of possibilities for how to bring this conversation into a community setting. And that's what I would love to engage anyone listening in on, is, you know, just listening to this podcast is an act of community care. And how can we take that and have more of these conversations? And they might not be perfect, that's part of it as well. Is I think we don't have these conversations more often because we don't know exactly how to do them. And I would just like to invite myself and anyone else who wants to join to just begin trying. And um, and that's all. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the show.
I kind of wanted to just catch up for a second and see, what you're up to. I'm just curious what you've been doing for work and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
how have you, that is kind of part of this conversation, is just like, how have you transitioned your life into something more sustainable?
Yeah, that is a good question. Well, when we worked together at Rivian, we were probably, what years did you work there? I'm trying to think of like when we overlapped.
I was
How
there for
long?
like 8 months.
8 months.
So
Okay.
2021 to 2022. Yeah.
Okay. So I was there from 2020 to 2025. So about 5 years. And
Mhm.
I loved the time there, and like burned out so hard.
Mhm.
And and I started to burn out pretty hard about 2 years in, and then it just was like a slow decline from there. And that wasn't Rivian's fault. It was me and my silly people pleaser side of me not knowing how to like set boundaries. And I also drank the Kool-Aid of Rivian so hard.
Mhm.
Which is funny because as a brand designer, I was helping create like the articulation of the mission and the goals and the purpose, and then I was believing like my own things that I was telling, um, which is, I don't know how to make sense of that fully. Seems kind of silly now to like look at it, but I drank it all up so intensely that then as I was burning out, I think that justified a lot of my burnout behavior because the mission felt big enough to justify my own self-sacrificing. And then really just like crashed and burned, like so much anxiety started coming up, massive amounts of depression. We can get into this too, but like I got stuck in like suicidal ideation, rumination stuff. So once that all happened, there's a lot to unpack there, but the short version is I just moved on. Decided I was going to freelance, and did that for about 5 months. And then an opportunity with Ford popped up. They reached out and I was so against automotive. I was like, I don't want to do automotive anymore. But one thing I realized in the 5 months since leaving Rivian was that when I work for a company that the company is an expression of me and it aligns with my ideals and my aesthetics, it benefits the company to the detriment of me. I end up giving myself to the company. And Ford, I took on the job at Ford a bit as a mental experiment to see like how engaged and how good of work can I do for a company that I'm kind of like indifferent toward. Like I like the people I work with a lot, but as far as like the shareholders of Ford and Ford's grand mission in life, and like I really don't care. And I have loved it. I felt a sense of me like come alive in the last 9 months of working there that I didn't know that I had, and it has nothing to do with Ford. It's like everything to do with me. I was giving up all of my creative energy to these corporations for so long that as soon as I stopped and I began slowing down, it was like, oh, I have a lot of things I want to create and say and do in the world, and that's kind of led me to where I'm at the moment. Still at Ford though, but yeah, that was a long answer for your short question.
No, it's all good. I'm curious. So it's been about 9 months and it's full time.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's like one of the things. I mean, I can relate with your experience of burnout, and we crossed over at a specific company. But again, like you're saying, I don't think it's tied to any one company. So it's been like a little over 3 years since that was kind of my last full-time role.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been doing more. Well, I first started out doing freelance that kind of felt like full-time. It kind of felt like a replacement for full-time work.
Yeah.
And then it slowly started to dwindle and transition into like this, it morphed into a whole different career path, basically. But I feel like, and this is actually very central to what I wanted to talk to you about, is to me, that has felt like a big deconstruction journey in terms of, I don't even consider myself a hardcore corporate person. I didn't start my career in corporate. I had a lot of years where I worked freelance and worked independently and kind of pieced together a career in Denver and in Colorado when there weren't a lot of jobs. And that was the natural response. And a lot of people around me were doing that same thing of just figuring out a skill and going out and finding people that they could provide that skill to,
Right.
So that was kind of the early years of my career. And then when I moved out to California, I wanted the bigger experience, like the bigger production team experience of how do things get made on a bigger scale and, working with these multifaceted teams and departments and things like that. And then when I did that a lot in the Bay Area and did, kind of the freelance circuit in-house for startups and, bigger tech companies and stuff like that. And it was such a good experience. Like I'm so grateful for it. And it just highlighted so much of what felt by the end of that journey. I was like, there's something big missing here for me that makes me want to get off this train, And so that's kind of, I've been, I don't know, just kind of unpacking that over the last 3 years and really questioning hardcore what it means to have a vocation versus a job, and how that, like, so much of what has come up for me in this process is just, it's not about just being burnt out and being like, well, fuck it, I'm going to go a different direction and call it good. It's like, oh, this is, to me, has become symbolic with like patriarchy in motion and the ways in which we have centered so much around this hierarchical order in society. So it's been a deeper excavation for me because it has represented something bigger And I think most people, it's always an adjustment to leave a full-time role and go out on your own or do any kind of career change. But I think it's taken me a long time because I'm also like in that process, kind of digging up some societal and cultural associations along with it. And I'm curious if like that, you might not put it in those terms, but I'm just curious if you relate to that feeling of like, I one of the things I picked up in your interviews was just this sense of trying to take a step back and slow things down. And that's a lot of what that's a big part of this kind of like deconstruction
Yeah.
that I've been doing. So I'm just curious if that factors into your career at all, or if it's more, if you compartmentalize it a little bit more.
No, that definitely is relatable. I like to tell people that compartmentalization, I'm a pro at compartmentalization,
Mm-hmm.
and that it has only caused me harm in my life because I end up operating in two ways at the same time, and those 2
Mm-hmm.
ways don't end up talking to each other. So it begins all the way back as like my Mormon upbringing. I, was like good boy, perfect, like everything's great, people pleasing, and then on the other side had this like deep interest in emo music, and we go like thrash around in mosh pits, and like in my psyche, those two things weren't in conflict with each other. But like, if I were to be a psychologist now and go sit down with like 17-year-old Kyson, I'd be like, let's talk about this. Like, what's going on? What are you finding in that like emo underground hardcore music scene that you're not finding at church? And why is that happening in you? And so as I'm looking at myself now, yeah, that's definitely there. The hard part with all of that deconstruction though is, and I'm sure you ran into this, is that you're blind to the cage that you exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like you're deconstructing something that you can't quite see fully. Because if you could see it, you would just change it and you'd step out of it. And
Mm-hmm.
all you really operate from is a sense that there is something bigger available to me. I know that I have this like innate capability of either like some potential that I'm not living up to or some essence that I haven't experienced quite yet. I don't know what it is that makes me know that that's there and that it's available. But something calls to that side of you, and then you just start feeling around the walls and like pushing on doors and seeing which one's open and which one's closed, and closing some behind you that you're like, okay, that one's not like when the recruiters reach out now with like some you could be the head of design at this AI startup. We just raised all this money from Sequoia. It's like, nope, I closed that door. Where 10 years ago, that would have like inflated my ego immediately, and I would have gone through the whole interview process. And now I know that doesn't serve me, and that's been part of the deconstructing is just taking away those parts. There's a really great quote I love from Michelangelo that I think about a lot, where when he was asked, when he was carving the statue of David out of marble, so it's not like easy like clay, they're just wiping stuff off, to form this figure. Somebody asked him and said, how do you do that? And he's like, oh, it's easy. I just chip off every piece that isn't David. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm going through as I deconstruct my career is I don't know what I'm creating yet, but I can look around and say like, okay, that part isn't me, and like cut it off. At the moment, working for Ford in a corporation is what I need to do. And it's this balance of like, don't blow up your whole life all at once.
Right.
Because I have 2 kids and I'm married and I've got some stability to maintain, which is probably a good thing because I have some self-destructive tendencies that I would love to just blow up my life and start all over. But so I can hang on to the corporate side and ride that where I need to, and then chip off parts of that don't work for me. When I get an 8 a.m. meeting thrown on my calendar and my workday starts at 9, I decline it. And it challenges something in my nervous system. I say like, oh, people aren't going to like this. And then I just like decline and reply like my workday starts at 9. And I say that not like as though I'm enlightened in doing that. It's like it actually is like a process. I have to talk myself down and be like, it's okay. People still like you. You're going to do a good job. And if anybody has a problem with your behavior, they'll let you know, and then you can act on that, or you could decide this isn't the work culture that I want for me. But I didn't. That sounds so simple to say, but I did not operate that way before. Like if they're like, we need you in here on Sunday, like we got this big fire drill. I was there like every time and was like grinding, and I needed their validation. I needed to prove my worth to exist in this place, and I'm undoing that.
Yeah.
And so I think you could call that patriarchy. This sense that you've got to prove yourself, earn your worth, climb the ladder. There's a hierarchical system of approval, and you're not qualified to experience that acceptance without labor. So yeah, patriarchy is like the more academic word I could craft on all that. Another word is just like I'm a people pleaser, and I've got to undo that people pleaser side of me and just like be okay with me.
Yeah. Well, I am curious. I think so much about corporate because it's so many people exist in that world, and it's such to me it feels like, how are we going to do the future of work when a lot, we still don't know how the AI situation is going to pan out, things like that. And so this feeds into we're going to get to the healing process part of this conversation, but this is kind of the starting point for me, because like I felt the process of deconstructing existence in corporate is like to give up a title, to give up that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Salary, all that kind of stuff. And I think for me, I wanted to continue stabilizing my career. And I felt like I had too much to say about how much it drains people, that I couldn't keep my mouth shut about that. And it made me unhireable, And so I had some shame and some sort of like self-consciousness about that. Like, that's kind of what I point to as the reason that I've struggled to get the same kind of work that I used to get. Is because every time I get into a conversation about that type of work, it's like, we want you to do it this certain way in this kind of like formulaic type thing. And I'm like, I want to innovate that. I want to move that forward and have it be different and have it be more matriarchal, I didn't have that language even 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But like, that's how I see, okay, sorry about that. But that's kind of where I see work going, and I connect it. I focus on it so much because I connect it to environmental outcomes and to people outcomes. And so, to me, I just think it's worth, looking at the dichotomy between how do we work towards sustainability and regeneration if we're still structuring companies in the same hierarchical way that created all this structure in the first place. That's my main question in life. But I think it's worth, I'm impressed you've been able to find a middle path of like finding a good, place that you can create those boundaries and they get respected. That, I kind of want to, I'm both like excited for you that you've been able to do that. And I'm like, how do you do more of that? How do you start to bring in any of this kind of thinking, or do you just really create good boundaries? Is that?
No, there's some good things to unpack there. Maybe you and I are both systems thinkers, I can tell, because you go from like, I wasn't finding satisfaction in my job all the way to the grandiose, how is this impacting environment and the future ecology of the planet? And a lot of people don't go up that ladder of abstraction that quickly. I do. And so it's great, Melissa, to talk with you, because sometimes I say these things and people look at me like, just go touch some grass, man. Like you're good. It's sunny outside today. Relax. So one of the systems that I've begun looking for, and this is what's really helped me, is the corporate world is like, it is a world. It's not real. Like a corporation is an idea. It's an abstract idea that we all collectively believe in. You believe that you have to show up at a certain time and you have to labor so long in order to get paid and to keep your security. And the people that you work with believe it too. And there's certain things you can say and certain things you can't say and certain ways you dress, and certain people you have to respect in this way and certain people you respect in that way. And it's this silly game that we all play. And the frustrating part that I've experienced is it feels like most people either play the game and like it, or they're unaware that they're even playing a game. And then the rare few that recognize that it's a game and decide that they don't like it don't stick around in that space for very long. So you kind of like get glimpses of them and then they're just like gone, and they're just kind of this mystery that shows up. What I relate to that experience from, when I started seeing it in corporate, because I didn't see it before, I didn't recognize it. I just got sucked in pretty quickly into my identity as being a designer for companies and like the net benefit that I could bring these companies. And I would constantly trying to like find the next company that would look good on my resume or that would impress my other designer friends. And which project could I launch that I could put in my portfolio. Like, it was all just this ego building experience. And then when I grew up Mormon, and when I went through my deconstruction process with Mormonism, it was so destabilizing for me, because Mormonism had done the same thing. It had created a world to exist inside of. It was coded. There were things I could say, things I couldn't say. There was this hierarchical structure. There was ways you behave, ways you show up, ways you prove your worthiness. And I did not know that I was living in a world. It was the water I was in. I thought that that's just reality, like, to the fullest extent. It sounds embarrassing to admit now, but I had no clue that that was a story that I was existing in. And so when I started to see that, and it began cracking and coming down on me, it immediately brought up these questions of like, well, who am I? And like, what am I supposed to do? And when nobody tells me what to do, how do I know what to do? And it feels like nobody knows what to do. And is this just how we exist from here on out? Is we just like, every day is just this mystery? And like, what about death? And how do we prepare? And where do we get stability? And it's like, it unraveled these existential questions in me that just, it went from personal stuff all the way up into environmental stuff, because once you learn to deconstruct one story, you begin to deconstruct all the stories, because the tool of deconstruction is the same tool. It's the same way of looking at it. And so the corporate thing quickly followed the Mormon deconstruction thing for me. And it didn't go very well, because unlike Mormonism, I just left it. Like, I left the town that I grew up in. I stopped attending, and I stopped hanging out with the people that were part of it. And although I wasn't like immediately free and safe and stable, I at least wasn't in it anymore. Well, but with a job, like, I have to make rent every month, and I have to put food on the table for kids. And I went through a few bouts of fantasy dreams of like, I think we just moved to Costa Rica and we live on an eco-village farm, and I work 10 hours a week, and we just do fire and retire early and just bliss out the rest of our lives. And then the pandemic hit, and that kind of shut that one down. And then we had a second baby, and then we've gone through like some health challenges, and like, reality just felt like it started clicking in, and my mobility was like a fantasy that I was living in. And I had to come to terms with that. Yeah. And that was a process. So I don't have like a middle way silver bullet answer. Some days I'm very frustrated with the corporate life. Some days I think it's great. Some days I don't work hard at all for the company I work for. Hopefully my boss never listens to this. Some days I work really hard and show up aggressively. And I've just kind of learned to give myself grace that there isn't an answer. I think that's what I had to come to terms with. Is in Mormonism, I had certainty, and I wanted certainty, and I needed certainty. And then when I lost it, I just like panicked. And then with my career, I've wanted certainty. I wanted to be like, well, if I'm not a corporate person, I'm a this person, and then I'll get certainty there. And then I'm realizing that I'm not going to get certainty there either. And so I'm learning, and that's where the slowing down has become really important, is like, slow your nervous system down, and just like, today, Kyson, you work as a designer for Ford, and you have meetings from 9 to 1, and that sucks. And then why don't you go on a walk and notice how beautiful it is, and then come back and do an hour of work. And then if you do a good job, maybe from 4 to 6, you can do your side project work. And I just try to treat myself like a child that's really dumb and doing stupid things, and like almost parent myself through this like way of existing as an adult in the world without spinning out into harmful ways of thinking.
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful. And I feel like I can do, I mean, I don't know why I focus on this piece so much. I think because a year ago, this conversation was different if we're talking about having this conversation in a context, like a year ago, there was still, some good job stability, maybe not. I mean, the job market has been pretty rough the last couple of years, but
especially for writers, I think,
I'm not making that up.
No, I think with AI sucks at writing. It's really good for like stimulating thoughts, but it's really bad for like providing the final solution. But people don't know that unless they have like a sense of quality to the writing. And so as a writer, it's really easy to be like, oh, I could see managers being like, we don't really need writers. We've got ChatGPT. Or we've got you. Like, you can write, Kyson. I'm like, I can't write. It's like, hold on.
You can use ChatGPT.
So it's exactly. So like anyways, I empathize with your struggle that you feel like the job market's shifting out from underneath you. And I think that's not an illusion. I think that's real. Okay. I think software engineers are starting to feel it. I think designers are starting to feel it. I don't think AI is quite robust enough that it's like openly taking jobs that people would have filled and they can point to it. But even if it hasn't, there's so much talk about that it's going to, and so it creates this feeling of scarcity and unease that
Mhm.
makes sense that we're experiencing.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say that my experience, because it's not like I haven't been trying, and I'm also, I like some, I think at this point I've just kind of moved on, and I'm like, I'm just going in a totally different direction, and I'll weave that into the healing stuff too, as well, because it's important and it matters to the, again, the deconstruction. I think that's just such a central theme to this conversation. But
Yeah.
for a while there, well, this is part of what has, I've had to unhook myself from this notion that that's the only option, and that, like, you know, so again, this is a different conversation today than it was a year ago, than it was 2 years ago. Because
Mm-hmm.
1 years ago, it's like, oh yeah, you're just, just stick with the stable job, and just, you don't need to do the like Costa Rica thing, like that's cool if you can make it work, but like there's no need to take that big risk kind of thing.
Yep.
And now I feel like we're getting to a place where it's like, well, shit, like if things really don't turn around, and like I've had this experience of just really like trying to find scraps of work that I've just had to get really creative.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good has come out of it, but like it just isn't like it used to be. Like I can't just get work like I used to. And when I have tried over the last year and a half, it's like there are roles, and then the budget goes away, or the
Yep.
shift. And I just think I'm so sick of that cycle. I'm so sick of that, like working so hard to get to land a role, and then within a year there's some kind of restructuring, and like we got to do this all over again. In the meantime, what I consider like my bigger gifts and talents are just sitting on a shelf, not really getting activated, because I don't have, because I'm in this like constant cycle of like,
Yep.
extract, like contraction, ups and downs.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm saying is that that's not just like happening in the freelance world anymore. It feels like it's happening in the hardcore employment world. And so mine goes to just like, well, what are we going to do? And so I start to think along the lines of social safety nets. And how do we because the thing is like, if you take the structure, the corporation away from people's skills, people don't lose their skills. You just have to reappropriate them and repurpose them. And so that's kind of like a lot of the thinking I've been doing over the last year. And in that process, I've had to really just be like, I'm not going back to corporate, I guess, like, I guess I'm just going to have to figure something else out. Yeah. And, constraints obviously necessitate innovation.
Right.
But not the most comfortable process.
Totally. I relate with a lot of what you're saying. And one thing that just came to mind as you're talking is I took a class from a woman about a year and a half ago. And it was like a hybrid permaculture and Buddhism class oriented around livelihood. So those are like three things that people are like, wait, how is that working? What she did is she's a permaculturist, which for people who don't know what permaculture is, it's essentially like gardening, but where you're creating systems where all of the different plants work together to create an ecosystem. So where in the West we do industrial farming, you put in one monocrop, and if it gets a bug and dies, like the whole thing dies. You got to use tons of fertilizer, pesticides to keep it sustainable. Permaculture is like, hey, if the tomatoes, I don't know if tomatoes do this, peas do this. I know peas do this. If peas put a lot of nitrogen in the soil, let's use that instead of fertilizer, and then let's follow up with this crop in this time of year, and everything just starts working together as a system. This woman essentially presented, why don't we think about your livelihood as a permaculture garden that you are building? And it's going to take you, just like it does a permaculture farm, years to get it to be sustainable, to where this part is supporting that part and that part supporting this part, and it's connected to a wider ecosystem, and it's in sync with the movement of the seasons and the flow of culture and all of that. But and that's scary to do. And the alternative though is like continue monocrop farming and continue getting wiped out every time a new pesticide or a bug like comes in. And then when the farm wants to do potatoes instead of corn this year, like, and you're not a potato, like, you know what I mean? They're just going to cut you and like put their new thing in. And so I think I really love that mindset. Where it gets tricky in capitalism is healthcare. They've got you tied to like a 40-hour-a-week requirement that you need to do this in order to be able to see a doctor, which is just corruption at another level once you start to see how that all is working together, healthcare and then future retirement. So what I've started to think, and this is what helps me find meaning in showing up at a place like Ford, because Ford is as corporate as they come. Like the numbers of like HR trainings I have to go through and like the corporate BS to exist here is just ridiculous. 10 years ago, this place would have killed me. It would have driven me crazy. And I now feel like I'm just existing on my own island in this place. And it's because I am, I'm going to say it openly. I'm building a permacultural garden of livelihoods around my current work until it can at least reach like a 50% threshold. And then I will shift into where more will be oriented there than around my job. But that's hard. Like I couldn't have done that a while ago too, because we had a young baby. My youngest is now like in kindergarten. And so I have a little more space to work on some side things. But I think that's what the future is going to have to do is you're going to have to subvert the system a little bit, and you're going to have to use the tools and the skills that they taught you while you were in the system to build something in parallel to it. But it's going to have to be like a different reality than the one we live in. And maybe I'll just add one more thing on that, which is when I was actually, let me pause for a second. I'll let you respond if there's anything else you want to build on there.
Well, I just want to go back to what you originally said, which is you've created some, and I'm assuming and have to give credit to the people who you're working with and working under, that they have allowed you to they've given you some space and autonomy to create some boundaries around your, obviously not to the extreme, and nobody's asking for that. I think that's my frustration with corporate is it's like, we don't have to exist in these tight boxes. We don't have to be so loosey-goosey, but can we have a little bit of wiggle room to just adjust so that it fits? And so I think what you're saying is that you did have a kind of like I don't know if it's like a spiritual adjustment or like an attitude adjustment around like your expectation level of what you were going to get out of your job and how it related to your meaning making in your life. And that is actually more of what has allowed you to kind of, temper the balance. At least that's what I'm hearing. And then it kind of makes room to, and I agree that like parallel path is that feels like a bit of the key here,
Yeah. And I had to go through a period of anger towards corporations, like a lot of anger. And it still exists in me. I don't ask for permission to do the things that I do. And if they at some point decided that they wanted to lay me off because my behavior wasn't matching the culture that they wanted, I wouldn't blame them for wanting that. And I would go find somewhere else to work where I could do what I want to do.
Do you ever feel like you get to that threshold or like near it?
At my current job, I haven't actually, which has been good. It's so funny because I was so funny, like the way our shadow sides work. I so wanted to be loved and feel belonging and accepted and valued. And I kept going to startups because startups are chaos and they need you. Like they will die. They will not get funding next month. Like the company is on the brink of death constantly. And so you feel this like constant sense of gratification. And then I got like, let's see, like it was before Rivian. I had a job offer from Apple and I was just like, no, like I don't want to be a corporate Apple guy. And then I had a job from Google and Meta and like all the same things. And every time I'd go through the interview process and then just get so like lost in the interview process that I'm like, I just don't want to be another cog in their machine. And so I would resist that. And now I'm fully in it. Like Ford's one of the oldest corporations that exists in America.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it because it's big enough that it's like Ford is not going to survive or die because of Kyson. In any way. Like it's been here for 150 years. I could come and go. They could lay me off. They could keep me. I could do my best job ever. And it's really not going to matter for Ford. And I needed to be at a place where my ego got checked like really hard and just like put that in perspective because at a startup, it plays some delusional thinking with you. Yeah.
So it's like happy just being an ant, just being a worker ant.
I wouldn't say happy though. I'm pissed. I'm pissed at being an ant, but I will do it.
Got it.
And I will use that rebellion to channel my energy to go build something else.
Into your permaculture.
My permaculture ecosystem, my livelihood ecosystem. Yeah.
Nice. This is the fuel tank.
It's And it's what I found though too. There's a lot of people that I work with that are similar, and they kind of maybe have to say it under their breath a little bit, or and we're so oriented around livelihood and like monetization to everything, and so
Mm.
it's easy to think like, and I think this is a trap that I'm finding myself in still, that I'm actively working on deconstructing a little bit in my own psyche today, which is, I work till 5, and then I like put my kids to bed, and then I like stay up till 10, and I'm working on my side projects so I can build my ecosystem of livelihood, when
Yeah.
like I could just work till 4 at Ford and then go hang out at the beach for the rest of the evening and just
Mhm.
relax. So, but in fact, my
Doesn't sound
therapist
very
recently,
fun.
yeah, right. Well, my therapist asked me the other day, she's like, so you're making all these videos, and like, what is your biggest hope from that? I was like, well, I hope I can eventually like make money enough off of it and build an ecosystem of products that it sustains itself. And she just kept pushing. And then what will you do? And I was like, well, then I think I've always kind of want to write a book. Like, I think it could be kind of cool to put some ideas into a book, and then maybe do some speaking things, and just really help people. Just really try to do my best to help people. And then she's like, great. And like, what would you do after you've helped all those people? It's like, well, then I would just feel like I'm complete and I'm whole and I'm worth being here and I've lived a good life. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds nice. And then what would you do? And I was like, and then I would relax. And she's like, why don't you just relax right now? And I'm like, that's so stupid. I'm not just gonna relax right now. Like, let me beat myself up for 30 years before I realized that I could have just relaxed the whole time. So that's a part of
But
my
also,
psyche. Yeah.
is it a tinkering mind? That's kind of how I interpret it.
Yeah.
If you're a big thinker and a deep thinker, you can't just shut that off.
You can't.
Like, you
That's
can
true.
create spaces to obviously have fun in the midst of that. But like anyone who's like thinking actively, like that is kind of the satisfaction.
It's
Is
true.
just,
And I think the
like,
difference.
you don't know if it's gonna work, but it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, deconstruct my deconstruction, Melissa. That's really good. I like that, because you're right. In that, like when I'm working on some of these films that I've been creating, I have endless amounts of energy towards them. I could stay up till 2 a.m. every night for 7 days in a row, and I would feel tired in the day, and yet I would do it again the next night because I get so pulled in.
Yeah.
So it's not that the work, I'm incapable of working. It's that I just need the labor that I'm orienting myself around to carry a sense of meaning about it. Otherwise, it feels pointless, and then I just don't. It's not that I don't want to do it. I can't. It's like I've hit a wall. Maybe this is like a neurodivergent kink, but if the meaning isn't there, I
Mhm.
cannot log in and do the work, and I'm willing to like lose a job over that. Where I'm just like,
Mhm.
sorry, that's just how I'm. I don't know when that happened in my psyche, but at this point in my life, I can't do it if I don't think that it has a point to it.
Yeah, but it sounds like you found a point to the work that you're doing for your 9 to 5.
Yep. And
And
the point isn't Ford's. That's the big like aha moment that I had, is that it's not the mission of the company. It's that the company is providing me the means to go build the life that I want to go experience.
Which is valuable.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I'm happy for you. That sounds like a good
Thank you.
spot to, have some creative freedom. And because I do feel this is the age old thing, right? Like, how do you sustain as an artist, and how do you allow yourself space and funding to do your own projects?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that's a puzzle for a lot of people.
It is. I also think the future is going to be far more decentralized than it's been in the past. And so as a creative that's like tuned into culture and looking for patterns and trying to help steer the products and meaning and strategies at companies, it's really natural to look at the big picture constantly. And you're not just looking at it with these like myopic view of like, how does this help my company? You're looking at it with like, what's going on and how is that affecting me? And so the itch that you're feeling and that I'm feeling and that everybody's feeling is like, when you say, I don't know if this corporate thing is right for me. I mean, my grandfather probably didn't feel that way, working a corporate job for 35 years, living in the same small town. So it's like my grandfather didn't work a corporate job, by the way. Just an example. But I think we're breaking a pattern in a way. Like, take religion, for example. Religions are losing, like orthodox. Well, there's kind of a return to orthodoxy, but that's a tangent. But the institutions are crumbling. The United States, trust in the United States is crumbling. Trust in corporations is crumbling.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a flaw in us as individuals. I think us as individuals filling the hole to find something new is exactly what should be happening.
Yeah.
We just don't know what it is yet that we're moving towards. We're feeling those walls and like trying to escape the trap that we're in, but it's pulling somewhere.
And we might get pushed out of the nest sooner or later.
Yeah. And when that does, like, don't freak out, because it's supposed to happen. Actually,
Yeah.
we're gonna freak out. Maybe we'll give ourselves grace. Like, you're gonna freak out when you fall out of the nest, because that's how nests work when you fall out of them. But you can
Yeah.
get back up and keep going.
Yeah. Well, and it is, again, it's just a very timely conversation, because it's just has never felt like this before, where it's like just so many factors of change are converging at once. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like I have to check myself daily and be like, we're on Earth at a time where we get to witness all of this, which
Yep.
is, I'm sure a lot of other generations felt like this too, but just there does feel like there's some speeding up of different change factors that are really forcing some decisions to be made. And again, maybe that's just my bias and the bubble in which I exist in, which, at this point I am so kind of focused on like regeneration and, how do we take all the things. I'm like thinking a bit like a survivalist right now of like, how do we, not to be a downer, but I'm like, what happens if the supply chains lock up, and like, how are we going to start to figure out how to circulate materials amongst ourselves? And the thing is, we've been consuming in the United States heavily for the last couple decades. There's a lot of shit laying around. So we have a lot to work with in terms of materials to repurpose and reappropriate and things like that. And I think of that in terms of our food system, and I think of that in terms of our education system. And to me, like, and I'm curious because you mentioned neurodivergence, and I'm curious if you consider yourself neurodivergent, but like, I kind of think, I'm not an ADHD expert, but I do think that's a response to people not wanting to sit at desks all day long. Like, the natural thing for us to be doing is to be in nature and learning from nature. And so are people neurodivergent, or are our systems just not built for the human spirit,
Yeah. I'm not sure on the answer there, but I do know that a person with a high intense pattern recognition skill would be a great member of a tribal hunter-gatherer society, because they would tune into when the seasons are changing and the migrations and what's blooming and what's not blooming and all of those things. And that's the person that you want helping you out.
Yeah.
That person doesn't thrive very well in a system that already has certainty and has all the answers figured out. And they just want you to show up and like put your time in. So I don't know if it's that neurodivergence is rising or that the system is breaking and it's making it more obvious where the neurodivergence isn't fitting in, or if we're just more tolerant of it. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. My children have been diagnosed with neurodivergence, and I know that it's hereditary in a lot of indicators. Like, there's correlations there, and so I probably got something spicy going on inside. But
yeah,
I also have. I know that the lines between neurodivergent symptoms and trauma get quite blurry. Being hypervigilant and at pattern recognition is a trauma response. And so what I've considered as just my personality might be a way, not that it's a bad thing, but it's like some things have happened to you and it's caused you to orient the world in this way. So that like when I see these meta crisis issues of like AI converging with climate change, converging with like the rise of fascism and aliens, to a normal person, they might not look like there's a pattern connect between all of them. And my brain goes, hold up, like, you see what's happening here. And I'm not sure what is it creating those connections to happen, but I do know they're happening. How is it? How do you handle it? I'm smiling as I say this, but these aren't like things that I smile about when I'm alone by myself thinking about it. They're actually quite like heavy and weigh on me. Does it weigh on you like in an emotional, mental health level?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot to that question too. Like, I feel like, to me, when I was listening to your interview, the really long one, I can't remember.
Yeah. Some Mormon stories.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking, like, and I think about this a lot just in general in terms of mental health and people that are kind of susceptible to suicide or, kind of just like spinning out and things like that. Like and we can talk about, suicide when we get to that part in the conversation, because I do want to talk about it. Like I've been touched by suicide in my family, and I endeavor to have more open conversations about it. It's interesting. I haven't really had a lot of them, but I feel kind of ready to start to go there a little bit more. And I wouldn't say that I've like ever been closely suicidal, but I have had feelings of like that meaninglessness and that like, what is this? That is a consistent theme throughout my life. And I just kind of equate that with being a sensitive person. And again, am I sensitive because I grew up in an environment that made me vigilant to my awareness, or am I just a sensitive person? But I do notice, I think a lot of people that are susceptible to suicide are deep feelers, and when the world doesn't feel balanced and when it doesn't feel right, these are the people that are feeling it at such a core level that it feels existential all the time, like getting a bagel suddenly is an existential freaking activity. And so I've definitely dealt with that throughout my whole life. And I think, I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I feel like there's always like new legs of the journey, but, having enough years and decades of experience, like with this feeling, I used to be just a total, I didn't even know what was going on, I was disassociating and acting in a certain way that my spirit was just responding to not having a lot of tools or sense of how to manage my own energy, kind of thing. And I think slowing down has really helped, as I've gotten older, like, again, unhooking from this idea that in order to be productive, in order to be a successful person, I have to be hustling hard and hustling all the time. And I don't feel like my family really instilled like a strong work ethic, but I don't feel like I got that from my family. I feel like that's a societal thing that I've had to grapple with. And I kind of come back to this core thing around career, because it's like, I do have a type A personality to me, on one sense of like, wanting to achieve. And then I just don't want to do it in these environments that feel really, grating on like a sensitive spirit, And so it's like, this is kind of the Rubik's Cube of my existence so far. I haven't figured out the balance. I'm starting to pull on some threads that feel like they could be going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is I've just simplified and gotten to the place where I'm like, I try to just tune into like the tactileness of life and the things that bring me happiness, the very small little details that don't add up to like success, but just give me a sense of like grounding here on earth. I guess that's touching grass, but I just mean, and even like the, nice materials, and just like, I try to like tune into my senses as a way to like bring me back into connection with my environment and find meaning in that way, because sometimes it really does feel meaningless, and I have to boil it down to the most basic components and then build up from there, kind of thing.
Yeah. I know what you're describing. Where my mind goes is I was doing that too. And that was working for me until some stuff happened in life that was hard to handle. And then just like going out and finding grounding was suddenly like not enough to keep me existing. And that's when I became like quite suicidal. And so, yeah, I think it's an age-old question of like I take comfort in a way of the philosopher Kant that says that the only real question in philosophy is whether or not to kill yourself. It's like it jars you when you think of it that way. But if you zoom out and you're like, okay, we've got all these meta crises happening at the same time. There's a meaninglessness in work. Politics is wild right now. There's so much suffering. I'm compliant in the system that's perpetuating suffering. There is no escape in reality. And even when you think you've escaped, you haven't escaped. What you're describing when you what I'm describing when I say it like that is like what Buddhists would call the samsara cycle. Like you're in it, and like you have to first wake up and recognize that you're in it, and you might have to go around and around and around a few times before you're like, wait a second, like I've been here before, and this is the same thing just with like different characters, and it's just playing out again. And then like what the Buddha says to do is just, that's when you slow down, just sit and feel. And you can't escape it by like running faster around the samsara wheel. You're just going to then accelerate it. And so, yeah, that's the only, that's the hard thing that I've had to learn over the last year, facing some like difficult stuff, was like feeling isn't going to kill you.
Right. In fact, it might save you.
Exactly. Not feeling it is going to kill you. But if you can just feel, and if you can't feel it alone, find somebody that can help you feel it. And you don't have to feel it all the time, but just like touch into it. And if it's not fun to talk about, make art about it instead of talking about it. And if you can't make art, then like just go sit in the ocean and float around for a while until you can make art. And just like go really gentle on yourself, and don't like apply, like capitalism's like beat us up in a way, and then don't use capitalistic thinking to then beat yourself up into trying to heal yourself. It's like, then you're just going to keep cycling, you know?
Yeah.
There's that wonderful Instagram account that's Healing from Healing. Have you seen this?
Ooh, I haven't seen that.
It triggers me so bad, which means that I'm probably like doing it because I'm like, oh, those fuckers, like, how dare they? That book meant a lot to me, you know, and I want to like jump in the conversation. They're just mocking like the whole healing culture. And yet if it's triggering me, that probably means there's some sort of truth in there. Like they're breaking a rule that my psyche says like, no, we don't cross that line. And that's helpful for me to just kind of like recognize the silliness of all of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I am curious how because I have heard you talk a couple times I just watched your most recent video or film. I'm not sure how you're calling it. And then also through your interview, and I don't know if I fully caught, or maybe it's worth re-articulating here, is like, how did you get yourself out of that sticky point? I think maybe I heard you say I was able to just start talking about it and asking for help, but like, is that how where are you now with your kind of like
mental health side of it?
Yeah. Or when you find yourself, how did you talk yourself back from the ledge in that moment?
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth just recapping.
Yeah. Like how I got there in a quick way. How I got there was I had deconstructed Mormonism, felt a huge loss of meaning, and then decided that I would choose to find meaning in something more important than building up God's kingdom. And so I found a new kingdom to build, which was like solving the problems of climate change. And the best vehicle, no pun intended, that seemed like they were doing that at a scalable way was Rivian. Rivian wanted to be a publicly traded company, but do it differently. And they were like setting aside equity in ways that no other company had done before. And the CEO of Patagonia was going to be on the board. And it was just, it clicked all the right puzzle pieces together in my psyche that this was the place where I could go and find meaning. And then I gave everything I could to that company for 5 years. And then once Rivian IPO'd, the realities of being a publicly traded company and the ideals that I thought that our company could have just didn't match. And it started to turn into this feeling that every quarter you had to deliver on shareholder value. And then when we wouldn't, like friends would just get laid off, like it was no big deal. And they'd lose their jobs and their livelihood during the pandemic, which was already a difficult time, which you know well, Melissa, what those periods of layoffs were like. And I was lucky enough to survive like the 5 or 6 huge cycles of layoffs that Rivian went through, but my psychology didn't hold it together very well. And the idealism that I was carrying just started to get crushed. And at the same time, I did that. So idealism in work was cracking. Idealism of being able to like solve climate change started to crack on me, which is difficult for me to say because people don't like it if I say this, but I don't think we're going to avoid ecological crisis. I think it's going to happen. And it's probably going to happen in my children's generation, or at least their children's generation. And when I started to come to terms with that, it crushed me like on a really deep psychological level. I can't really say why exactly, because it made me confront my own existence and the temporal nature of just being a human alive. I know that I'm going to die someday, and I don't cling on to this like transhumanist idea that through tech we can just live forever. But I don't know if I'm I'm not okay with my children dying. How about that? I'm okay with me dying, but realizing that they might suffer because of the actions that we're taking today just started to like really upset me. And I would react to that by then working harder at the company that I was at, but then I was losing faith in the thing we were working towards. And so it ended up just being this like bouncing cycle of disappointment that I was feeling. And then what ended up happening is I realized that a lot of the pain and the trauma that I experienced in Mormonism, I had solved and deconstructed some of it, but not all of it. And when I lost my belief in the company that I was working for and capitalism as a whole and the government that we exist in, and started realizing that climate change isn't a new thing. Like, we took out all of the buffalo that existed here in the West. Like, if you were a Native American, you would have said that we ruined the climate 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's going, and yeah. So anyways, it just started to crumble on me. And I started to tip into a really like manic depressive state where I was having a lot of insomnia. I couldn't pull out of like the hole that I found myself in. And I felt like I was living with these blinders on. Like, I went hiking with a friend, and it's funny, I kept like putting myself in situations where I'd want to try to connect with people and let them know about how distressed I was inside, because I knew I needed some help.
Yeah.
But it felt like I was seeing reality more clearly than they were seeing reality. So we'd go hike through the trees, and I would just go on and on and on about this meta crisis, and they would kindly listen and nod their head and be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like at the end of my rant, just say like, oh, isn't it beautiful out here? And I would just like jarred, like, what do you, well, yeah, but like, it's also like the end of the world, man. Like, are you not grappling with what I'm saying? And
did you not hear a word?
Yeah, exactly. Like, these redwoods are not going to exist if the climate rises by 3 degrees of warming, because they need a perfect, you know what I mean? Like, I just had all these ways to not find joy in what I was experiencing. And it felt like I was seeing the truth in that. Like, to deny that the redwoods are going to disappear would actually be like a form of spiritual bypassing that the world was committed to and that I was not committed to. And at the bottom of all of that was a root existential fear of change. Not climate change, but just change broadly. And my deep, deep resistance to change, and a deep-rooted feeling that if I worked hard enough, I could fix it so that it wouldn't change, or that it is changing and it's somehow I'm at fault for that change, or that even if I'm not at fault, I'm responsible for fixing it. And that was an illusion. And I had to go through this period of like grief, like a deep sense of grief, that whether it happens or not, I don't know, but I had to go through a grieving period of like, what if we don't fix it? What if ecological collapse happens globally and millions of people die and millions of animals go extinct and the whole thing is disrupted to an irreparable way? What if that happens? And that was really hard to like sit with. And yeah, and that's what I got help from like therapists to like sit with that feeling. Did a lot of meditation. That's when I collapsed out of Rivian and took on like a 5-month freelancing stint. Didn't make much money. I was mostly living on savings and just I was only working like a couple hours a day and just really trying to slow down and just feel that feeling. And I found a feeling on the other side of it, which was this is where it kind of gets like spiritual for me, because it's a little bit ineffable and hard to describe. But at the bottom of the pain that was there was like a gift of like some sort of gem that emerged. And yeah, I don't really know what happened, but yeah, I can tell you a day that something clicked, which was there's a part in this redwood forest near my home where people go. It's on this Buddhist the Buddhist monks take care of this big forested area, and people will go and hang up photos of people that have passed and like dogs that have passed and leave poems and memorabilia. And there's all these like Tibetan prayer flags that are hanging in the trees, and it's this beautiful grove. And when you go there, it's like redwood groves already feel spiritual.
Yeah.
And then to go there and to feel that spiritual feeling and then see all these dead people like hung up in the trees, it really like confronts you with your existence and that it's temporary. And I would go there. I went there every day for like 6 months and would sit for like an hour in meditation and just like confront and look directly at my own existence and say, you're gonna die. Your children are going to die. And that sounds so masochistic to do, but what it would do for me, the gift that it gave is when I would then return back home, my child that was throwing a fit was like the most beautiful thing in the world to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was happy just to exist. And the sky today is blue, and those trees today are this color, and today it's flooding, and today it's hot, or today it's cold, today I got laid off, today I didn't. And it just became like existing as a whole is enough. And then from there, I now feel like I can do anything. Like I'm now free. If I want to participate in like climate activism, I can, without any need to grasp that there's a solution that we're going to achieve if we all work together to get the thing. Because I don't know if there, I hope that there could be, but I don't need there to be a solution for me to be okay with my own existence.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it gets to be that dire in a sense, it does. I think your choices feel so limited that you almost you kind of like go through the eye of the needle in terms of finding that bit of freedom.
Yeah. And I did ask for help. That was your first question. I went like on this 3-day stint where I just like truly stopped sleeping. I could not sleep. I was in such a heightened state of anxiety that I couldn't settle down. I didn't realize that I was having like a manic thing happen.
Yeah.
I thought I was like a superhero and I was just gonna like change the world. And then at the end of like 3 days of not sleeping, everything just started to like unravel psychologically. And I went out by myself in the night found a cliff and was like thinking about ending it, and became quite upset. And I decided that before I did, I would call my dad. And yeah, that was a really big moment for me. And I don't even know if he recognized what was going on, because I was just like crying, and he's like, hey, whatever it is, you're okay. Like, we'll help you. Do you want us to come visit and take care of your kids? Like, sounds like you're having a hard time. Do you need help stepping away from work for a little bit? And he really just like talked me into a state of like non-denial of anything that I was experiencing. It wasn't like, no, you're good. Like, you've got this. It was like, it looks like you need some help right now. You looks like you're feeling a lot. And I don't know why, but part of me felt like I couldn't ask for help previously. And I wasn't allowing myself to recognize that I needed help and that I wasn't in control of what was happening psychologically for me. And something about crossing that line broke a shame wall that I had built up in me of not willing to let people in to understand what I was going through. And I feel pretty free of that now. To the point where like that's what freed me to be able to go make the videos that I'm making online, which are like, they look like ex-Mormon videos that deconstruct Mormonism, but they're really deconstructing like how we form meaning and trauma and myth making. And I'm using Mormonism as my storytelling mechanism because that's the life that I grew up in, but it's about being a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that piece.
That's
Yeah.
It's heavy. How does that land with you?
I mean, I can absorb it because I feel like I have swam in these waters enough that, but I just, in general, I think it's hard, it's hard for people to hear about the moments in which, like, the little intimate details of like when someone is, truly feeling out of options and feeling frustrated to that place. And it does bring up stuff for me in terms of like, do you feel like you're reaching out? It was somebody that was on the other end that was able to receive you that was also part of that equation, it sounds like.
Maybe the wider detail there that is contextually helpful is part of a Mormon rite of passage is to serve a 2-year mission. And when you serve a 2-year mission, you really don't have contact with your family. They've changed what the rules are for today's Mormon missionaries, but when I went in 2009, they sent me to Russia, and you don't choose where you go. They select it for you and they just send you. And it was brutal. Like, quite violent, quite scary, and you just have literally zero contact with your family. You can write an email home for 45 minutes once a week, but you can
Wow.
only write to your parents, like nobody else, no friends or anything. You can't check any social media.
Yeah.
And I was having a really deeply challenging time there, and didn't ever tell my parents. One, the church told me not to, and two, I felt like if I did, they wouldn't have believed me and wouldn't have rescued me from the pain that I was experiencing. I think
Yeah.
they would have, and I truly think they would have, and I don't think that's a. I think they probably admit this now too, is that they probably would have rewritten my narrative to be like, you got this, you're strong enough, we believe in you, just try praying, like buckle down and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so it felt like, well, what's the point of telling you when I'm struggling if you're not going to help me? I'll just handle it myself. And I internalized that belief system so deeply that that I was about to end it for myself when I couldn't pull myself up anymore. And so that's where calling my dad that night became, I now look at it, I didn't realize it at the time, but I now look at it as a very like symbolic threshold crossing moment where I undid a lot of the programming that had existed in my psyche before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now, like, what's different for me is I talk openly in talking and admitting that that's happened to you. People get concerned, and I don't feel bad that they get concerned.
That's good.
And I don't feel, I used to feel like, well, if you admitted these types of things, you'd be looking for attention, and you're just like fawning that you're a victim and that you need help so that people will pay attention to you.
Yes.
And when I hear that voice pop up in my head, I say, wonderful. Oh no, the people that love you want to help you. Like, oh no, like, you're looking for attention from them. Like it's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of that.
Yeah.
Because if any of my friends called me and was like, I need some help, I would be like, thank you. Like,
right.
I would actually be angry if they hadn't said anything and had harmed themselves. And so that's, yeah. And in a way, the more I talk about it, the more free I feel from it. And then I've had people like reach out to me and be like, hey, thank you so much for telling what you've been going through. Can I tell you something? And I'm like, sure. And I already know what they're going to tell me. And because I've deconstructed that shame in myself, I'm open to like hear whatever they want to tell me and whatever story they need to package it in. Mine was a climate change, crisis going on, but theirs might be something else. And like the bottom of it, it's just pain and shame. It's the combo of pain and shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to respond to that. Can you hold on for just one second? I have
Yes. You're fine.
Friends in the background that are making noise. Hold on.
You're good.
It's my niece and nephew.
That's awesome.
They're super fun and like love to mess around, but
yeah. You'll probably hear some screaming child in my background at some point too, so don't be alarmed.
It's fun, but yeah, I mean, let's see. There's a lot I want to respond to in that, because it's a story I hold in my heart and in my head all the time, and I rarely verbalize it. The one place I have is the essay that I shared with you, and I've spent time like editing that and refining it so that it really feels like it's saying exactly what I want it to say for what it is.
Yeah.
And yet I really haven't broken the seal on speaking more extensively about my experience with my mom passing away from suicide. And, so again, I've written about it, but like talking openly about it is a newer experience for me. And I really haven't, well, first of all, I just haven't had felt like there's been the right venues to do that. Like, I don't know what the right venues are, is one thing. And then to what you were saying, like there's a component of like, well, there's two things. One, whenever I just tell people that, I instantly feel responsible for their experience of sharing that information. And I can understand how it feels on the other side, receiving kind of like jarring news. That's kind of what it is every time you tell someone that.
Yeah.
And unless someone's had a similar experience or maybe not, just I think people process loss in all different ways, but if someone has gone through a lot of loss and trauma and, you know, healing around that, I can have a more fluid conversation because there's some element of relating there.
Yeah.
Not to say, I mean, again, like, I kind of feel willing to have this conversation, but I feel uncertain about the like appropriate boundaries around it.
Yeah.
And if I am, I do get self-conscious about, because I feel like I have been accused, maybe not accused, that's a bit of a hard word, but I feel like there has been a sense of like, well, no, I have been called needy in my life.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say, like, that's where the shame is coming from a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is this feeling
And
that,
that needy is a bad thing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think for at this point, I embrace neediness as a human trait, and actually something that like more of us should aspire to, because we have been so conditioned to
Yeah.
just, you know, have to handle everything on our own, that I think we need more neediness in our
Yeah.
culture, in
Yeah.
a sense.
Yeah.
And actually really just the willingness to have compassion for ourselves when we feel like we need someone, someone's company to help us through a hard moment, or just in general.
Right.
And then it becomes less about like the need and more about how do we go about communicating that need, so that maybe, you know, well, I don't know. I think this is what I keep coming back to, my core experience in this dynamic of like reaching out for help.
Yep.
There's a piece of it. Sorry, now I'm talking in a big circle, but
No, you're good.
when you say that, it makes me feel sad that I wasn't there for my mom in that way.
Mm.
And to just be totally transparent, it's, you know, I think I write in that essay that my mom did call me the weekend before she ended her life, and I didn't take the call in that moment. It wasn't like, it was just a regular Saturday, you know, and I just was busy, and I kind of felt like, oh, I don't really have time. That was the thought that went through my head, is I don't have time to process something, but I didn't know that the state that she was in.
Yep.
I just know that that's what we did a lot in our relationship, was we process things.
Yeah. So a phone call from her at that time looked like I don't have the emotional bandwidth to like hash out all this psychological stuff with you right now.
I just don't have the bandwidth in this moment, you know,
Yeah.
and that was just the beginning of me learning how to just even have my own sense of boundaries around when do I, you know, when do I make myself available and when do I not, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so but I want to be honest about it, because I want to talk about the other side of that, of like, so anyways, I did end up getting in touch with her the following day and having we made plans to go up to this lake, like a couple hours away. Our whole family was going to go.
Yeah. Can I ask how old you were?
I was 32.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So at that point, I had kind of like, I went through a lot of, I just, my whole life has felt like being in a bit of a washing machine, and I had somewhat stabilized by that point, but it's like weird. It's like on the outside, you might not have thought that, but like I had a lot of times where I didn't feel settled and grounded, and like I've moved around so much, and I think that's kind of part of it, is just this like jitteriness.
Yep.
But anyways, so I was able to get in contact with her. We made plans. I talked to her again the next day, and that's when things just kind of didn't seem right, and they seemed off. And I started to ask her I was like, just something isn't right. You know, are you doing okay? And she was like, well, I'm going to see my therapist on Thursday, and I'm going to start some new meds. And she had gone off her medication in the spring. So this was in the fall. So she was probably 4 to 5 months off of medication that she had been on for 20 years.
Mm.
And this is stuff I didn't know that at the time. Well, actually, she did tell me that in the spring, but I didn't know or think anything of it because I didn't know, you know. And so when we went back and started looking at like her medical records and things like that, I was like, okay, I see that this is probably a factor in where she got to. And there's a lot of suicide in that side of the family. So it's not just her, it's like her constellation and her context of what she knew. And that's something that people may or may not know, is that typically if you do have somebody take their life that's close to you, your chances of suicide go up about 50%.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So I had a
yeah.
good friend in high school commit suicide, and then another friend in college, and then my mom on and off threatened suicide growing up with her own mental health. So that's something that I've come to learn in therapy over the last year or two, is that I might have a little bit of a neuro pathway in there that when things become overwhelming, that's the route that my brain wants to go, and becoming aware of that. So when it shifts there, be like, oh, there it is again. Like, that doesn't mean that that's the solution. It's just a solution out of the hundreds of things that we could do right now about what we're feeling. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Melissa. And I don't want you to feel responsible for my emotions and empathy that gets conjured up by that. What I hear, if I can observe some things that I see familiar in myself too, is I feel this burden. Like, I don't want to tell people about my emotional state if I can't also, on the other hand, provide the solution for them.
Yes.
And so it's like, hey, there's this really big problem, but also check this out. And it's like packaged with resolution before I've even unloaded it. And I have this thing where I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk about it until I have it resolved. And then I will talk about it. Then they will see that I'm like put together, and then it won't be overwhelming for them. And that is a heavy burden to carry, to both like being crushed and like fixing it at the same time. I don't think that those two things work together.
Yeah.
That's one thing that in this new period of like the side work that I'm doing, is I wouldn't call it design work anymore. It's just I'm trying to make art in many, many different mediums. And I've come to realize that art doesn't have a resolution. Like, design has a resolution. Strategy has a resolution. Your writing has a resolution, like when you're doing copy for a company.
Yeah.
Creative writing may not have a resolution, which puts it into the art side of things. And none of us are resolved ever. And when you think you are, you're going to find out in a little while that floor also dropped out from underneath you and you're not yet. And so art is a beautiful medium to just practice not having an answer, practice not being okay, practice like not trying to open up and provide the solution at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle that I think we've developed as a culture, and it's really difficult to undo. Do you relate to that feeling at all?
Yeah, no, I think you definitely, correctly picked up on that sort of tension. That's always what I'm trying to do around this story. And I think it's like, I think there's some work I haven't even touched in this realm for me in terms of like the loss component.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can't imagine.
There's also a loss. I think so actually it's interesting because I did talk about this on a hike with a friend a couple days ago I don't talk about this that often, and it's not because it's hard for me. It's because I don't know how to have an imperfect conversation around it.
You're afraid you'll like come out really messy and chaotic.
And also just kind of like, I don't know why I haven't felt a bigger sense of loss. Like, I think my grief has come out in some different ways versus what you might imagine. That's the thing, is like people imagine what your response to that kind of tragedy is, and so that's kind of another reason why I don't know how to have this conversation, is I feel like there's a projection of what my response should be, or maybe I'm making that up in my head of like what I think the other person thinks that how I should respond. And my response is not that. Like, for my bigger feeling around my mom's death is acceptance. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that's because she struggled for so much of her life. That is a lot of what I saw in my relationship with her, was struggle around depression. And not to say, I'm not advocating that as the solution, but when you see someone not in pain anymore that you really care about, there is a certain lift around that. And I feel guilty, I think, for that in some ways. And then the other component, and I also just want to, when I do get the opportunity to talk about her, I want to remind myself and whoever I'm speaking to that this was like a very special person who had a lot of those characteristics of like deep feeling. And so she had a lot of imperfections. So I want to humanize her as much as possible when I speak about this. And because it ends up landing in this zone of like, again, this is all stuff I really haven't talked about or worked out in public or out in community, but like it brings up a lot of like, well, why couldn't she figure it out? And that's a lot. I kind of want to bring this back to like why it's so important to have these conversations, is because I think actually one of the things that, I'm not going to say caused this to happen, but certainly was a factor, certainly didn't help prevent it, was that it was just never okay to talk about when I was growing up. It wasn't okay for her to talk about when she was, the culture just wasn't there to talk about heavy mental health stuff. It was always just relegated to the therapy room, if you even had a therapist. So I think it's really important to start bringing these conversations out a little bit more to the center.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I think like when did we decide as a culture that like you have to pay somebody $200 an hour and have a closed private door with a stranger that you've never met before you can share your problems with the people that you know and love? Like, what? Like that's crazy. But yeah, that's what we all do. Yeah.
Well, and again, I'll just say this is where I think patriarchy does a number on us, because in the patriarchy you're not allowed to, speak of your emotions, essentially. And if that's the culture, then we don't actually get to come in contact with the vast emotional intelligence that exists in all of us, which to me is a huge untapped resource. And so when we're talking about, having these conversations in more of a community setting, obviously there does need to be some facilitation around like what is best practice, but they are going to be imperfect conversations, know? And the last thing I'll say about my mom is that for this, thought is, one of the things that I've started to recognize is a lot of the loss I feel is the loss of a relationship I didn't have with her, because it was so inundated with this heaviness all the time. And again, I like want to rush in and say, but it wasn't her fault. She was working through stuff, But it, the reality was that there was a lot of heaviness in my environment growing up, and she was a wonderful person, and she was a loving, caring mother, and all of these things can exist at the same time.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, and I want to pause for a minute and say thank you for sharing that with me. And I understand how difficult it is to vocalize some of these things. Sometimes it kind of can get stuck in a way that's hard to articulate why it can't come out and why it's scary to come out in certain settings and situations, and the responsibility you feel for that emotion. So I think that that's more significant than many people would realize for you to share that. So thank you. I would imagine, I'm just gonna pattern replicate some like experiences of deconstruction that I've gone through to yours. I haven't gone through what you've gone through. And so I think sometimes when people like compare traumas, it's like a silly game to play because it's like, well, it's just different and I'll never know the context fully. But I do know what pain feels like, and you know what pain feels like. And I think that's like a human thing that everybody knows what pain feels like. And one of the things that's helped me is, Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey.
Mhm.
I have been intentionally writing stories and memories about my own life in these films that I've been making and rigidly following the hero's journey because that allows me to, let's say with your mom, for example, I can recognize there's these parts that like my mom, it makes me angry that she was this way and it makes me sad that we didn't have this kind of relationship, but also she was a complicated person and also going through her own stuff. And it's like everything's in conflict with itself.
Mhm.
And when I feel that, it's like the only word I could label it as is just it's confusing. Like the whole thing is
Mhm.
just confusing.
Yeah.
Um, but when I can take that jumbly hairball and string it into that hero's journey framework and say, because so the hero's journey, starts off with, I'll use Lord of the Rings as the example to move through, or Star Wars. You've got the Shire, where it's beautiful and it's perfect and everything is great, and it's these little hobbits running around, fireworks and canoeing, and they just love their life. And at some point in my life, and at some point in your life, you had the Shire. You can remember when it was great. Even when it was hard, there was still moments of greatness. And then something began to change, and it called you to start to look at it differently. And then it like moves you through, and then you're like lost on your way to Mordor, and it's fucking dark, and there are demons around you, and you feel like you're gonna die, and you don't know if you're gonna make it through. And then, so what that does for me psychologically is it gives space where I can really lean into how good was it? Like, how good was my life as a Mormon? How good were my parents to me? Where did I get all the meaning from when I was there?
Mhm.
And then I feel like when I've given it justice and it's like it's had its moment, now we can sit down for a second. And now we're going to talk about how shitty it was to go through and pass through Mordor and everything that I had to overcome and how I changed and who was Samwise with me on the trail that helped me when I couldn't go any further. And then we together at the end toss that ring in the fire, and then we go back to the Shire. And now that I'm back in the Shire, I'm like, I'm free to talk about it, and I have some wisdom and some insights that I can gain. And that's taken again like that hairball, and it's just like it gives us some spaciousness of like, let's just air it out and let's rearrange it. And then when I rearrange it in that way, then I can watch Lord of the Rings and see my own story
Mhm.
projected, and I can see Luke Skywalker facing his father and realizing that his father that he hates is also the thing that he's warring against, and that it's also who he is, and he's half robot, and then it integrates, and then they both save each other, and it's like it's so mythic, and it makes my weird, wacky experiences suddenly have like a mythology to ground myself in.
Yeah.
And then creative work becomes spiritual because you're working through your inner psyche. And when I thought I was working on climate change before, well, that's outer psyche. That's Luke thinking he's going to take down the empire. But what Luke
Mhm.
really needed to do was like face his dad and work on his own sense of self and identity and things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where to go with that, but that's the mess that I'm finding myself in, and that I recognize you in as well. That we're fellow journeyers on this Mordor journey, trying to figure it out here in the dark.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a math, it's a bit
Yep.
of like okay, I'm in this part of the cycle. If I know anything about, if I've had enough cycles, I know that it eventually cycles into another part that
Yep.
I can look forward to, and I can compost all these lessons and take that into the next leg of the journey. So just, I think it's helpful to have that sort of
Yeah.
adventure is a huge, reference point of
Yeah.
like, well, this is just part of the adventure, and I think the other thing I want to introduce at this, because I actually don't relate with like starting in the Shire.
Mm.
I'm still waiting for the Shire in my life, like if I'm
You were
being
born
totally
in the Empire Strikes Back episode, like it entered in chaos. Of
entered into chaos. But that doesn't mean I didn't have a loving family and
course.
didn't have, I can definitely, pick off good things in my upbringing and in my childhood, where I go and I think of like, how do I frame this in a way that feels peaceful and loving and, nourishing. I think so much about my mom's spirit, and
Mm.
like that is endless. She was really an incredible source of unconditional love, like the ways that she could love. were very like atypical. And I think that is also what made it hard for her to fit in to this world. And so there's a spiritual component here, because I feel like what relationship we didn't have in the earth plane, and it's not like we didn't, like we were close, but I just do feel like, you know, we were growing up together. And so that naturally creates a feeling of like, I wish I had more of, you know, practical mentor, but she was a spiritual mentor, you know? And so it's like, I like to tease this out a little bit too, because again, I think having these conversations it's like, I can only get so far if I only have the first part of the conversation. The more I have these conversations, maybe I can start to uncover more of this for myself and with other people. And one of the things I toss around a lot is like, we had a really strong spiritual connection. Like we were like, I just, you know, we're made of the same cloth, and I can see that, I can feel that. Like I feel that her spirit in me, and the ways that she, you know, her little mannerisms. And those are the things that I really cherish, because to me, that's the part that is eternal. And so then when you have that kind of like spiritual relationship, then it becomes about someone just changing form, but that connection and that, you know, that part doesn't go away. So some of me wonders, is it just that we had a stronger spiritual connection that I feel less, you know, I still feel her in a sense, even though like she's not physically here. So there's a lot, it's like a loss is a prism, right?
Yeah, for sure. Even down to like these abstract concepts of matriarchy and patriarchy. Like they're not, those two are stories that we tell ourselves. You know, like I'm doing this, you're doing this, like we're casting the characters that exist that are probably more paternal and familial than they are systemic. And we like to like I love my videos right now. I'm intentionally casting the Mormon church as my form of patriarchy, as a character to work with. I don't wake up every day like at war with the Mormon leaders anymore. I don't really care about them, but they're a great.
At one point,
I did at one point, yeah, and I took it so seriously. Like they felt like they were the villain and the characters in my life, and but now seeing them as like there's the Hermetic principle that as above, so below, as within, so without. I can now recognize that when I get caught into like injustice in the world or all of the things I hate about Donald Trump, okay? Donald Trump exists to me. He is as real as Darth Vader. You know, I know that like, go with the metaphor, because I know he is a real person and he actually is killing people and harming them. But like in my psyche, he is as real as Darth Vader. And everything that I see in him that I hate his lack of morality, his like ruthlessness, that nothing is sacred, that it's just all about him. Like those characteristics probably live in me. And my refusal to acknowledge that and to integrate that into my own psyche and to use some of the positive things that could give me, that man he gets shit done, and it's in a terrible way, and it causes problems, and I don't agree with the shit he's getting done, and I think it's only self-serving, but he is able to move and get things done. In our like activism world, we don't. We're stuck in these like rules of morality, and I don't necessarily agree with like Extinction Rebellion's tactics all the time, but I love the way that they're just breaking those rules blatantly of like, who said we can't destroy fine art? Like there's no rules in any of this. And and I think if I walk that all the way back down then to like these abstract, big picture, systemic things, and start to realize like it's in here. Like there's no amount of like corporate structure that I could rebel against, or climate change that I could fight against, or Donald Trump activism that I could do that's going to ever resolve the actual like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader shit that's happening in my own brain. And I just keep like putting up these prisms and these mirrors to pretend like that's not the battle that I'm having, when it actually is very much the battle that I'm having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this actually brings up an interesting question for me too, in terms of how much of it is inner work and how much of it is outer work. Because I think part of the deconstruction I've had to do is just not, just stop paying attention to the people that are so annoying, and to your point, like, I think, I don't even like to say his name,
Right.
DJ2. I think he's kind of a it kind of comes back to the storytelling, that like structure that we're talking about. He's playing a certain role in this evolution of humanity, and he's the wrecking ball. He's all about, he's unintentionally doing it. I don't think he even knows his role necessarily, but you can see there's like kind of some weird benefits to some of the things that he's doing, but like, obviously, we would never sign off on that.
Right.
And similar, I don't endorse him and his actions or all of that, but
right.
At some point we're kind of in this conundrum where, and it kind of brings me to this place in the conversation where there's so many different narratives around collapse or shifting or change. There's a lot of different threads that people are either attaching themselves to, including myself. I have a certain way I think about the changing of capitalism and the changing of our economy and environment and all that kind of stuff. And it is this duality. I think it comes back to this interdependence between, we're working on ourselves, so that if everyone was just working on themselves and improving, figuring out this relationship or integrating it or whatever, recognizing the places where you have these sort of like darker tendencies, reconciling them, or maybe not, maybe just like letting them exist, whatever that work looks like for individuals. There's the individual plane.
Yep.
And then there's the cultural plane. And I do hear a lot of, I kind of bristle when I hear like, oh, it's just all about the internal work, because I'm like, yeah, but there's a cultural component here that I think we're not talking enough about, that has to be an interdependent relationship with the internal work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I kind of translate that into, patriarchy is so individually focused. And I mean, I just keep coming back to patriarchy because I feel like we need to call it squarely what it is in a way, but that's just one way to talk about it. That's just my particular language in this moment.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll evolve once we have better, language. But to me, matriarchy is more considering of the relationships and the like context of the individual work. And that's what ends up creating more community-based solutions around, a lot of the wellness and healing world has been very individually focused for a long time. And now it really does kind of need to evolve to where we're working on ourselves in community, in relationship with other people. Because, that's the reality of our existence.
Yep.
And it kind of brings me back to the conversation about suicide prevention, where I kind of feel like people are falling through the cracks because we don't have enough community social netting. We're not versed in how to talk to someone about suicide and recognize the signs, or understand that like going off medication for 20 years is probably, the family should be looped into that conversation.
Right.
So there is a social component that I think we're missing when it comes to mental health. And when we talk about the number one factor of number one health factor, it's not poverty, it's not nutrition, it's not, any of these external factors. It's actually relationships. That's the number one thing. You can grow up in poverty, and if you have good relationships, you have a better, health outlook than someone who is isolated with a lot of resources, So I don't know.
Do you think,
to that.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. And community is hard to build. Community's been the biggest struggle that I feel like I've faced since leaving Mormonism, especially because I had community there on a level that I don't think a lot of people have ever had in their lives before.
Yeah.
Like growing up, there were 300 people that surrounded me. I knew all of my neighbors. My parents knew all of them. As kids, you just go to anybody's house. I knew people that were spanning ages, like old people knew me and young people knew me. Like it was complete. And what gave us that community was that we had a shared aim and a goal and then a path to achieve that aim. When I lost that is when I said, hey, that's not my aim and my goal anymore. And then they're like, oh no, you're dangerous to us. And then it was like ostracization, and I got lost from that community. So that's the downside of like dogmatic communities, but there is something really beautiful that happens in community. And I often feel like I walk around and I'm like, people don't know what they don't know they're missing. And I think as American culture, especially, we're missing that really deeply. Now, I would never, so now I'm at this point in my life and I say, well, what do you do about that? Like, how are you going to go get community? I could go to a different church, but I'm not that interested in like that form of belonging anymore. I've tried like attending the same yoga class every week so I can start to know people. And I'm just like, that kind of, it's okay, but it's like, but not really. My wife has formed great community through dance. She participates in lots of different dance groups, and dance has like it's like an ancient way of humans bonding and forming community. And I think that's really special. What I've started to do over the last 6 months was, as I'm working on these films, I've been finding people that live around me that are also working on similar personal things. And we get together and we just riff. And I thought that I needed some like activist community where we get together and we huddle about how to overthrow the government, but now I'm like, actually, to go fish off the pier with a friend and like talk about our YouTube channels is good. And I don't think I had, again, this is me deconstructing patriarchy. I had a moral hierarchy of which labor was more valuable than other labor. And I've come to accept that like fishing off the pier with a friend is just as valuable as any other form of labor. And to think that it isn't is delusional. And that could, like, I can see how somebody could respond to that. Like I got the dichotomy in my head, and they could say like, oh yeah, easy for you to say, like, white boy that's like works in tech and like has the money and isn't facing the things we're facing. And for that, I would say you're right. And I'm so sorry that not everybody has that opportunity. And I will do my very best to help other people have that opportunity. But that doesn't mean that I need to walk around beating myself up and suffering either, because that would be doing the same thing to myself. And so there's like, it's just a form of like acceptance, and when I can accept it, then I'm no longer reacting. I'm then able to like contribute and help in some way or another. And every day that evolves. I don't know what that means. Today it means making videos on YouTube about suicide and getting feedback from people like, thank you, I've been there and I've never been able to talk about it. A year from now, that might mean a different form of creative work, but both in like the way that my wife has found community in dance, and then I'm finding it through filmmaking. I think everybody has like an artistic side of them if we widen our definition of art. And I'm going to give my ranty TED talk for a second. The matriarchy is creative. It is creation in action. It is birthing life. And that's all the universe has ever been. And it's all the universe will ever be since the Big Bang. It's just been like exploding outwards in endless amounts of life. And if we want to shift into that state of being, I think each as individuals, this is where it goes from the individual to the collective. I think all of us have to begin creating and following the bliss that's within ourselves and telling about the pain that maybe we've been through so that it can their shame, making beauty where there wasn't beauty before. I don't think there's a silver bullet, but when I imagine like if I doomsday and then look for the other side of the doomsday, it goes like this. It goes, the AI takes out all of our jobs in 5 years. And we live in a culture where all of your meaning is tied to your sense of identity and your value that you're providing at your workplace. And we're going to probably experience a collective collapse of meaning at a scale that I don't know if we've ever faced as a globe before. It's not just going to be isolated to a town or like the Great Depression. It's going to be a collective loss of meaning while all capital gets funneled into a few. And when I say few, I mean like 12 people, because AI will be owned by the investment groups that control these things. And that is going to be disruptive to all of us. You're going to be faced with all of those existential questions that I was facing as I stood on that cliff edge of like, what am I for? Why am I here? Who am I? What are we doing here? This sucks. This hurts. I don't want to do this. What's going to happen to my children? My children are going to, like, it's going to be really quick to spin out. And at the bottom of that, the only thing left to do is go fishing on the pier with your friend and to make art. And so kind of like my therapist said at the beginning, like, why don't you just go fish off the pier with your friend and make art today instead of wait until the whole thing comes undone and then start like doing it. So that's my like glimmer of hope at the end of this. But
yeah. Well, and I will say, I mean, that was all because my grief came out in like, just became existential of like, what does this mean for my life? How am I going to survive? Like that was kind of, again, I kind of write about it in the essay, but I'll just verbalize it again here. Immediately following my mom's death, it just was like, I've already had an unstable, I just found some sense of stability. I need to keep this train going. And I just, again, boiled it down to the basics. I got to the rec center and swim laps every day. I tried to keep an orderly schedule just so that I could have some like
stability of some sort.
Yeah, some normality. And then that evolved into this feeling of like, I think I actually was working in a 9-to-5. I wouldn't call it corporate, but it was corporate for me at that time. And it felt really constricting. And then I started to feel like, okay, well, I need to ensure that I'm making contact with things that really bring me alive. And I wanted to live by the ocean. And so then I was like, I want to make art. I want to be creative. I want to work with more creative clients. And so I reached back out to some clients I had worked with before, and it was the less stable path, but it felt like I was doing something to take, to live life to the fullest. And again, maybe the stability would have allowed for some different kind of flourishing. So I don't want to say that, I couldn't have done it in a different configuration, but it did. That's what kind of led me. I did some traveling in Europe and thought about living in Spain and Portugal around that time, like before I came to San Francisco. But I got to Spain and it was just too slow. And I was like, no, I want some energy. I want some action. I want to be part of something like a little, more fast-paced. And so I went to San Francisco. But, when I landed there, I was meeting all new people and I was in this state. That's kind of when the grief caught up to me. So that was about 2 years after my mom passed away. And because I had a chance to kind of like, I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to be for a while. It all kind of came rushing in, and it was more the flavor of just like, how do I stabilize my life? It was that I think is a central question around trauma. Trauma creates a lot of instability. And so
and disconnection. It's like I'm spinning off and I'm not on an orbit anymore and nobody's going to save me and I'm alone and I'm scared and I can't, just nothing to grab anymore.
Just how do I ground, like how do I find the ground underneath my feet again? And when you're doing that in a place where you don't have people around you that have known you, because I think if I had done that in Colorado, that's where the majority of my community has been, that I maybe could have found some more grounding. But I really that was actually, now I'm going through a transition, but my faculties are online. There was a point, like there was probably about 6 months where I was really like close to, checking myself into a hospital to like recover. And what ended up bringing me back to life was just, I moved back to Colorado for a short amount of time I was like, I don't want to leave San Francisco, but I can't hack it here right now. So I came back to Colorado for about 4 months. And like what brought me back to life was just being around my family, and they were so non-judgmental. They were so whatever you need, but like they weren't over doting. They just were like, we're here for you and we love you. And and to feel like supported in these small ways, like everybody was doing like a little bit of contribution to help me stabilize. And so it didn't land on one person's shoulders in a major way, but all those little contributions added up to, okay, I think I can give this another go. And then I went back out to San Francisco, and that became the next 10 years. I still was working through a lot of grief. And I will say in all of those 10 years, I had a hard time really finding like, I found great people and great friends, but actually feeling rooted in community was a struggle. And I think as I started to ask people, you know, other people were having, struggles with that too. But the one thing I really needed during that time when I felt like I was just working through a lot of grief, I just needed an invite to go surfing. I just needed to go out to lunch. I just needed to feel included. I needed to be able to go to the barbecue and maybe be a little bit depressed, but just be in the company of like a social situation. Yep. And I'll say like, there were a lot of people that extended that. And then there were times where I felt so judged for being in a depressed, grief-stricken state that I want to say that because those are the things that actually make the difference, is when you invite someone who's sad to the barbecue and you don't expect them to perform. Yeah. And don't expect them to like be, all uppity. And so.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just want to say that because I think it matters.
I think it does too. I think you're totally right. And I felt that same thing when I was going through my Mormon deconstruction stuff of like, I kept thinking, these were narratives I told myself too. People would invite me places and then I would go and then I would just monologue to them for like 30 minutes about my life and all the confusion I was feeling. And then I'd go home and then replay the whole conversation in my head and be like, they don't want to hear my stuff anymore. Like I'm just becoming that guy. And so then I would self-isolate so that I wasn't a burden to anybody else. And that's not a healthy place to be. But you do need the right people to support you. People that haven't passed through pain have a harder time being okay with the pain that you're experiencing because it causes them to like look at some of it, either their own they've been avoiding. So, and it's not like, I'm sure you know this too, like you don't need friends where every time you go, it's like a group therapy, but you do need people that you can be real with and talk about those things with. But it's like a weird catch-22 because they can't show up for you until you can be open with yourself and accept yourself in those ways. And there's some level of acceptance that I am the driver of this ship and this is my life. And if I'm going to live it stuck on the couch doom scrolling every day and alone, like I can. And yes, there are major forces at work that try to keep you there. You have whole huge $1 trillion companies doing everything they can to suck all of your attention and awareness into these phones. You got corporations that are trying to drain every life out of you so that they can make money off of your labor, and they're not going to give it back to you in a form that's representative of the labor you're providing, because that's what capitalism is. And it's all upstream. But as Gandalf says to Frodo, we don't get to choose the time that we're born, but we get to choose what we do with the time that's given to us. And I think that's the thing that we're facing. And we're not throwing some ring in the volcano, but our ring is like, can I tell you about my shame and tell you that I'm having a hard time? And can I text you and say, I need help today? Which feels like throwing a ring in the volcano. You know what I mean? It's like, to open yourself up to that level of vulnerability is really hard.
It is. Well, because a lot of times it's not received. And I think to me, it's not, I used to get really upset and feel really, my feelings were hurt about that. And I would get resentful of people. And I've just gotten to the place where I'm like, oh, it's a skill set, to be with someone else's grief is a skill that we should probably all have. As like, I kind of relate it to like being in the backcountry. Like you don't go in the backcountry without like some tools. And
there's some people you take with you and there's some people that you're not going to invite to go with you.
Right. Exactly. And so, but I think it's so important to just make these conversations more casual so that they don't get relegated to these private quarters. Like let's talk about it in community, because then we can pick up on like, if it's safe enough, we can start to really get to the bottom of it. And then I love this analogy of like porpoising. That's my favorite type of like social activity, where you can go deep and you can go light, and you can go deep and you can go light, and it can all be one more. And I think a lot of people feel that they are not tied into community, and that would really help,
Yeah. What does that word mean for you, the word community? Because you've experimented, I saw, with like a co-working space. I don't know. Are you still doing the co-working space?
No, that was when I was in California. Okay.
Yeah. So like that is a form of community. When we say, I think when we say the word community, it feels so formal. And I'm curious, like, how has that idea evolved for you? And how do you, when you say we need community, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And these are questions that I'm wrestling with too. So I don't have like an answer I'm waiting to see if you get right either.
Yeah. Well, and I want to go back to what you said about just fishing on the pier as a way to contribute to social health. I think that's totally, yeah, I think that's kind of where I've like come to, is just how do we take all of, because all of that like formality around community sometimes starts to feel like a brand project.
Yep.
You know, and like, oh,
which is just like capitalism. Like, it's like the only way I know how to do this is to make a logo for it and an Instagram account and then invite people with an Evite. And you're like, dude, what are you doing? Just
which
text your friend.
Is very helpful, but you know, like sometimes you can just.
Yeah. But I say that like I'm doing the same thing with my own projects too. So it's funny.
But no, I mean, I think so kind of full circle. And I love that you've brought up this dichotomy of like having to, you know, climate change has to get fixed. I have been on that, you know, on that bend for a while. And I think it's just recently I kind of just got to the place where I'm like, I only have so much energy, and I'm starting to feel really bogged down by this like needing other people to change kind of vibe that I've been running for a couple of years. And because to me, it's so logical. Like if we just do this, it'll
I know.
reaction and we'll be all good, you know? And like at some level, I kind of do believe that, like where you might think, or I don't know if this is what you actually think, but in your story before where the AI people take over and then everybody's just left to like do whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I just think that they're going to like go away somehow, and that people are just going to start creating like a new type of commerce that involves trade and helping and volunteerism, but it's like really rich and exciting and like full of life because creativity is what's fueling it. And who knows?
Like an ecotopia, you know, like we've got the solar punk visions out there of the world we're going to create with the fusion of tech and sustainability. And
oh yeah. And I can get really excited about all of that, but it still pulls me into this really like heady, like, you know, big planning kind of space where more of where I've come to, back to the fishing on the dock on a simple afternoon, is just I love this idea of like reclaiming, and like, because like tactically working with things is just a very big shift from how my brain, it brings me down to the present moment where I still feel like I'm contributing to the bigger picture, but I'm not having to like do this big, like, you know, mental gymnastics around how are we going to get everybody like working together and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where I've just started to bite that off as like my newer path of what I want to start exploring, is like how to reclaim things. And there's just so much, people just get rid of stuff all the time. And like, there's so much new use for it.
Yeah.
Where it becomes this mechanical, like Rubik's Cube, and it keeps me really connected to beauty and creativity and art. And it doesn't have to be big, you know?
Totally. You're describing something that there's a philosopher named Ian McGilchrist that he wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. And he's a philosopher and a neuroscientist, and he studied the way that, you know, you've got left brain, right brain. And we've got these stereotypes of like artistic versus like logical. And he's like, okay, just forget all of that because that's not accurate. It's kind of like a pop psychology way of thinking about it. He said what you really have is you have two parts of your brain. One he refers to as the master, and one is the emissary. So one has this big picture, systems level perspective. It can't even articulate itself all the way, all the time. It lives in a state of poetry. It looks for symbolism and feeling and meaning and these like ineffable senses of existence. So the mystics like live in that space. And then we've got the emissary, which is the other part of your brain that puts things into action. It goes, it coordinates, it strategizes, and it moves. And he said that what we have right now is a culture where we've all developed the emissary part of the brain. We are really action oriented. We're really good at fixing things. When we're running now into problems that our actions are actually not fixing, and in many scenarios creating the problems that they think that they're fixing, he's like, we're going on this recursive spiral where we're going to terminate ourselves because we have a disintegrated brain in the way that we think about the world. And then his take is like, well, okay, then what do you do about that? How do you activate the master part of the brain? Because the master should be driving and informing the emissary. The king
Yeah.
shouldn't be down there, like, well, I'll use the queen. Let's go more feminine here. The queen shouldn't be down there like on the front lines with the soldiers chopping things up and like building the kingdom and building the wall and all that. It's like she needs to have the big perspective in the tower to be like, I'm seeing something coming. It's
Mm.
going to be like this. Like, we're going to be okay. Like, here's the manifesto. And then the emissaries all go to work and do the thing. And he said the way that you activate that part of your brain is you got to slow down. You got to let the emissary know, like, you're good. There's not an emergency right now. You don't need to fix it all. And then he said you need to engage with art because art activates that part of you that is okay with not being resolved, is okay with big picture thinking. And he's like, if you try to write poetry or you read a lot of poetry, that's really good. He talks about that, like, to get practical, he said the first thing you should do when you wake up is you should go create something every day. Go create something. First thing, don't look at your phone. Do all output before input, because the master part of your brain wants a voice and wants to express itself. And the more that it's feeling cut off, the more that the emissary just gets like, well, what are we doing? What's the action? And he's like, that part of you is never going to figure it out. You got to tell that part, like, sit down for a second. Like, I got to go just like chill for a while and draw some stuff that's I'm not going to sell either. Like, don't get any ideas of like some Etsy shop. Like, it's just stay sitting,
Yeah.
And that's really hard for me to do, but having him articulate it in that way, he's got some amazing YouTube interviews. If you want to go deep on Ian McGilchrist, his work has really changed the way I've thought about some of these things. And so has the work of Joanna Macy. She's a Buddhist eco activist. She passed away a year ago, in like her late 90s, but she's legendary. She created this movement in some of the activist circles called the Great Turning. And she describes that this time we're in is the Great Turning. So she gives you this like mythological perspective that we're going to shift, and we're either going to shift aware of that shift that's happening, and it's going to open up into something more beautiful. It's not going to be utopia and paradise, because that's always been the illusion that all cultures have always aspired for. But she said it's going to change, and we can change it for the better. But to do that change for the better, we have to stop being reactive, and we have to start flowing with the change. And so to free ourselves from that, you have to grieve. You have to like look at it cold-headed and be like, okay, like, it's going to collapse. Holy fuck. Like, that's terrifying. It's like a cancer diagnosis in a way. You're like, you guys, you've got till 2052, and then it's probably going to end.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay. And at first you like panic and you go see all the doctors and you try to fix it. And then when you realize like it's terminal and I'm not getting out of this, it's like, then you suddenly start living for the first time in your whole existence of like, okay, like, what are we going to do about this? Like, am I going to panic and pick it, or am I just going to like slow down? And reality, like, this is the irony of capitalism. You'd subvert if everybody didn't go to work tomorrow and went fishing off the pier. Things would break down in a bad way. Like, there would be suffering. That's not a utopic solution, but it also would that would be the biggest challenge that we could ever give our government, is for a general long-term strike from everyone. Because the means of capital, it's all of this capitalistic system. So relaxing with your friend and sitting on the beach is actually subversion. You could feel like a fucking punk rock, activist out there.
Yeah.
And realize that it's so counterintuitive to like everything that we've been taught on how to move through the world. It's weird.
Yeah. It is counterintuitive, but it's so, and this is a totally different conversation, which will be like another time.
Yeah.
But that's what I keep coming back to, or have come back to consistently over the past 3 years, is just like, because I've seen other people burn out from the corporate thing, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, it feels like sacrificing my life to continue to engage in this cycle that we're all doing. Why are we doing this?
Right.
If I can't convince other people to do it differently, which there's plenty of people who are questioning this now, but like a couple years ago, this wasn't a common conversation. But I just have to do what I'm like, we were not put on this earth to pay taxes and bills. I just know that for sure.
You sure?
Yeah. Well, maybe not.
No, I'm with you.
But, yeah, you know what I mean? It's just like that. So I follow a different truth. I'm like, there's a different truth at work that feels like a natural order. And
do you know what it is? Like, can you articulate it? And if you can't, it's okay, because it's a bit ineffable.
I just think it's nature. That's kind of the best word I have for it, is like nature really knows what's up. It's it's been in the design field for several thousand million years, and we should just learn from that and not try and reinvent it. Like we are that. And so I just keep coming back to that simple truth that the more we align with nature, the more that these innovations, that's why I do have a lot of faith in humanity. I think there will be collapse, but I don't see it as like, to me, like destruction and like hoarding and competition, that is all a patriarchal narrative. And I don't see any of that. I see there being challenging times in which we have to get creative of how to work together. And that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. Because
we do need to switch to renewable energy. There's free energy available to everyone, yet we have been, we've been convinced that it belongs to a gatekeeper. And same with AI. I just think that stuff is just it scares me, like to a certain degree, very much. Like people in power with technology and money that are unchecked, that terrifies me at a certain level. And what I'm working through right now is, that's why I had to kind of step away even more and just be like, actually, I'm just going to turn toward what I think needs to happen, which is if everybody is engaged in their own creativity and like listening to their voice that's coming through their own natural design, which leads into human design, which creates a whole safety net for all of us, then we're going to be okay. Like we're going to figure it out. And to me, humans are so cool and we're such an untapped resource that I can't imagine a world where we don't get to see the beauty of humans flourish at a higher level. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be utopia. Yeah. I just imagine like some kind of space where I can make art, where I'm working in collaboration with my neighbors and with other, like I see a lot of distributed communities that have learned how to be more self-sufficient, not as individuals, but as communities, and that those link together. And that becomes kind of like a way, like when COVID happened, like we adapted on a certain level, nature adapted on a certain level. So I think these natural forces of change, this is natural. Like all the things we label as bad is actually part of the natural cycle. But now it's time to get to the, what do you call it? The Shire?
Yeah, the Mordor, like where you leave the Shire.
No. I mean, we're gonna have to go through the dark forest for a minute, but like, I'm thinking there's a Shire on the other side of that.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I like what you're saying with recognizing that it's all like there's nothing that exists on this earth that didn't come from this earth. So like the idea of like, where does nature begin and where does nature end? You're like, oh, we're just going to return to nature. It's like, well, when did we leave it? Tell me which part of our planet isn't nature and which part is nature. And that makes me think like, when the meteor smashed into the earth and wiped out all of the species that were alive at that time, that was a pretty bad thing. But without that, I wouldn't be here today. And so who am I to say what's good thing and a bad thing? AI feels like a bad thing. Trump feels like a bad thing. There's plenty of bad things, but then I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Like
couldn't AI be cool if it was like with a greater spirit of goodwill?
Totally. It could be, and I just like, I'm open to that. I just don't know, and freeing myself from the idea that I have the solution to it and that there's a right way to like do the thing and a wrong way. That doesn't mean that I'm just gonna like lay down and let powerful people abuse other people. I think that is not okay, and that goes against nature. Like nature always brings life. Always. Even when like a wolf kills an elk, it's all part of the ecosystem of then more wolves and more elk, and like it just if we're stuck in this like materialistic, individualistic perspective where you think you're a tree in the forest and you forget that you are the forest, and not only are you the forest, but you're like the continent that the forest exists on, well then like the whole perspective shifts and you're like, oh, I don't know. So somehow and for me, I look at all this stuff as just like super mysterious, and you're pointing at that, like there's something in you and there's something in me and there's something in all of us that knows that there is a version of life that could be experienced. There's a version of acceptance and ease that's available to us as humans that we're not experiencing right now.
I think that's my beef. you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I
is
don't
that
think we
it
should.
actually is quite possible, and we're just choosing not to go there,
It's
you
like a
know.
birthright almost, and it's not even like a. It's both an outer state and an inner state. Yeah, I was working with a mentor recently. She's a creative director that does like creative coaching type things for people that are trying to like activate their art. And she gives a challenge where she said, try to articulate the highest vision of your art. Like if you could, and what I love is she frames art as God. So it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
does art want? Like if
Yeah.
art could come down and see the state of the world today and could give us this benevolent gift of something that we could understand or feel, what would it want to tell? And each of us have like a different interpretation of what that is. If
Yeah.
you get up to that level, it starts to get into the same stuff. It's like love,
Mm-hmm.
acceptance, belonging, connection. Like the words, they end up in these cliche type spaces, but you're
Mm-hmm.
nodding, like you know what I'm talking about. And so then you flip and you say, okay, if that's what you want to bring to the world, what what is your audience experiencing now who don't have that? And so then I started to think like, okay, well they're unaware that this connection is even possible. They're kind of moving through their lives through the routines of wake up, get ready for school, commute, do the 9 to 5, come home, eat dinner, scroll, go to bed, repeat every single day.
Yeah.
When there is this divine loving mystery that they could be in contact with at all times that's holding them and loving them, and there's this abundance. And I don't know where that knowing comes from, but I know that exists within me and it exists in all of us
Yeah.
because when I experience good art, it moves me to that place where
Yeah.
I'm suddenly like connected with the people at the symphony and I'm like, whoa, are you guys feeling this? Or you're at the rave and you're just like, whoa. And
Yeah.
there's something there. And so the
Yeah.
next move is to then say, okay, if that's the high vision and these are the people that are asleep, and this is where it gets psychological, is to recognize that the hero in your hero's journey wants that high vision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so does the villain, though. The
Mm.
villain also wants that, but you're going about it in two opposite directions. So to use a Luke Skywalker thing, Luke wants to free the galaxy of the
Mm-hmm.
evil empire. So does Vader. At the end, he's like, Luke, we could do this. We could take it over together. And
Mm.
and when Luke like integrates that in a way and accepts like his father, then they both are free from the challenge of wanting to overthrow the empire, and they just like can accept their their dharma or their like point in life. And
They're different versions of
yeah,
reality, kind
yep,
of.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And then it brings harmony to the force, in the universe that they're
Right.
in. And so what I'm learning to do for me is I've got a whole art well-crafted list of who that villain is, the
Mm-hmm.
rules of how to do the right thing. Like as I started like think about it, I was like, okay, my villain. I'm curious. I'll just pull up some notes. I'll read through my list
Yeah.
of villain, and you tell me who like what comes to mind when you think of this. I'm like, my villain. He's like a hustle culture person. He has no morality. He doesn't care about the future. He only lives for the now. He's a man. He doesn't take any of it seriously, and he's careless. Nothing sacred. He wants to impress everyone. He hurts other people knowingly. He uses his mind to manipulate other people. He takes joy in that process of manipulating other people, and he just laughs at the way that you care so much. And he thinks that you're like woke, social justice warrior thing is like hilarious. It's kind of like the Joker, to Batman. Like, why do you want to save these people? Like, what are you doing? Like, look at this. Like, they don't deserve saving. And my villain has some of that in me. And so then it's
Mm-hmm.
coming to terms with like that villain is in here too. And if
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck and I can't move forward to achieve that high vision that I'm wanting, it's probably because I'm at war with that villain and I haven't quite like accepted some of those parts of me.
Yeah.
And not accepted as in like, oh yeah, I see that I do like want to hurt some people sometimes, and that's not good. I mean, accept it as in like Kyson, I'll call myself out of my bullshit right now. I work a 9 to 5 job at Ford and I pretend like it's okay, but I really hate it. And I wish I was doing something else and I want to do something else, but I can't figure out how to do it. I've got
Mm-hmm.
like thousands of followers online, but something about making a course feels like morally icky to me. And I can't get myself to make the course. Uh, I've tried 3 times to make a course. Like I made a whole design, how to make a design portfolio to get a job course. I did the whole thing and I didn't publish it because I just felt like it was gross to ask for money because I hate capitalism. And then now I look at that like, okay, bud, that's an unintegrated shadow part of yourself that's got all these rules of how to do it. And if I can free myself from that, I then am free. If I can free myself from the means of capital, like Kyson, imagine if you could make a YouTube video a month, host a container with artists that also want to achieve their high vision, and you're there to help facilitate that.
Mhm.
And that's what you do for work. And then on the side, if that covers your income, then on the side you make your art,
Yeah.
and that's available to you if you will integrate that shadow part of you that you hate so badly and you say is immoral to go make money. I'm like, oh, I can see it, but to get
Yeah.
myself to do it is terrifying, and I have to it feels like a battle between good and evil in a way, and
Yeah.
that's where, like you mentioned earlier, it kind of is annoying when you hear people talk about that it's just internal work, and I understand that 100%. And it is oddly so internal for every single one of us, and we almost have to collectively do the internal. If you do it by yourself, it's not going to change anything, but we can collectively wake up to it and do it together. And maybe that's what community is creating space where you can work through these things together. Because I can't see that villain side of me. I couldn't see it until I sat down with this woman and she's like, let's talk. And then she just starts calling me out of my bullshit and giving me these worksheets to go through, and suddenly I'm over here spinning and losing sleep that oh no, what's happening to me? And that's community, that's right. Shared connection and shared humanity.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing, is how do we be a gentle mirror to other people and to ourselves? Because I relate with some of the things you listed about your villain. My villain is more along the lines of the upstanding person who behind closed doors is not nice. And,
yeah.
And I have that piece in me where, I can get, frustrated, and I have a control mechanism that I have to deconstruct as part of my response to being in a world of competition, where I just feel like if I don't, I'll just out myself here. It comes across when I'm on a customer service call and I'm so frustrated with the freaking quagmire.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the line I say all the time to the person on the other side. I'm like, it's not you, it's your company. I'm so sorry, but I'm so frustrated right now. And but I'm just need to get my business taken care of. That is not a moment in which I am chill and yeah, I've got all day and it's cool. Right. I'll just be on the phone for 4 hours, whatever.
Right.
But and I can't, this is something I work on regularly, because I'm this is me just trying to push a result through because I need to get on to my next thing, versus just could I take a more relaxed approach to a customer service call and be a little, you know what I mean? And it's just and in our personal relationships, what ways am I subtly I feel like I'm a pretty generous, empathetic person, but then how have I created a subtle contract that the other person doesn't know about,
Yeah. Then you resent them for not fulfilling, and they don't know that you're resenting them for not fulfilling this contract that you've made up in your head. Yeah.
Right. And I didn't know that, but I guess that could be considered manipulation in a way, And so it's just we've got to be.
Do you hate that part of yourself?
Well, I feel shame around it in a way, because it's oh, I'm not being a clean relator, that's me trying to get, that's not a clean relationship, or not relationship, because a relationship has a lot of different parts, but that's not a clean way of dealing with people.
Yeah.
And so it's that's what I think it comes back to when we're talking about nature, and where does nature stop and where does it begin? It's a feeling of cohesion and balance. And I know you've talked about this, and I feel really impressed too with all the work that you have done throughout your lifetime. It's not just a couple years. You've really gone deep with yourself in a lot of different ways. And ultimately, I think we all kind of have to do that at some level. Some of us will go deeper than others, but if we're not getting below the surface and figuring out how to have the scuba diving gear to do that in a safe way, that's what I think is really needed in this moment, when people really do need true connection, and they need to learn how to both hold a gentle, compassionate mirror and also receive that.
Yeah.
And so I guess my villain is, again, just the pretending, the performing around, the pretending around moral values and then not backing it up with actions. That's my, I hate that. And I do. I hate that when it shows up in if my actions feel incongruent. And then, we have to give ourselves grace for being human. And so I'm also trying to extend that to
that part of you too. Yeah.
And what is helpful is when I've like reached out to a couple leaders in the corporate sphere who I know and trust and like, and think are good people, and have asked, like, why haven't you spoken out about these things? Because I'm just genuinely curious of, like, why aren't more corporate leaders speaking out right now? And I'm so glad I did that, because I got responses back that made me have more empathy for their position. And like, but how would I know that? I just have a story in my head if I don't actually reach out and like ask the question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it might not have been a pleasant experience for them on the other end, but I'm just, and I can work on like how I ask.
Yeah.
How do we go further if we don't have imperfect conversations, and really tap into like what I think is like a very, very untapped resource, which is emotions and emotional intelligence,
Yeah. I love what you're saying there. I'll share that to maybe connect to what I'm working on more recently, and because something shifted in me where I was so oriented around climate change, as that being the work of our generation, and I still think that it is probably the most important thing that our generation has. It's like, as far as a challenge to face, because it's going to have, even if I accept, like, there's a great book called Deep Adaptation, by Jim Bendel, and I read that after reading like The Uninhabitable Planet and like all of Naomi Klein's books. Like, I went deep. I made this. This is like embarrassing now, but this just shows my level of psychosis. I was like, or not psychosis. I wanted the answers. Like, I wanted realism. I was like, stop bullshitting me with like, what is the state of climate change? And so I went on the UN's website, and they give those like big climate reports every 2 years. And I went down to the sources of them and copied all of them, hunted down the research articles that they used for the sources. So the UN's report is a summarized version of the hard data that they actually have to work from. And when they write the report, they will write it like 7 times, and it gets reviewed, and then they curate what they feel would be appropriate to tell the public. So every time those reports come out, they're like, oh no, it looks dire. Well, it's like, well, that's the conservative version of how dire it actually looks. It's actually far worse than that. And I took all of that research data and I built my own AI thing that I could dump all the data into, and then I could ask specific things and it would give me the data on it, and then I could interpret what that meant. And I just started doing that, and for like 3 weeks I spun out bad, because I was like, okay, we're not gonna fix it. And that was hard for me to do. And then I was like, okay, well, then we gotta adapt. We gotta get moving. So I got in touch with the guy that builds like those Earthship houses in New Mexico, and I was trying to like suss out like, okay, what's the cost for this? And are there grants you can get for building like a fully sustainable regenerative home that's not on the grid? And we started like adding up like, okay, Rivian IPO, it's like, that's a huge windfall that I never imagined in my life. And like, maybe I could take some of that money and buy this Earthship. And then it was like, it was exhausting for one. And then 2 was like, okay, say I moved to the deserts of New Mexico and I'm in my fully regenerative house that's producing food and recycling its own waste, and I have no heating bill, and I'm not connected to the grid. And what do my kids want that life? Like, no. Like, my kid wants to go to public school, and he wants to like I'm so anti public school, and he's like, no, I kind of want to just go to a big school with like a bunch of friends and play soccer. And like, part of me just had to like accept where you are, and accept that there isn't going to be an escape that's going to happen in your lifetime. And then when I started to accept that, then I went through a phase of like, if accepting who you are and where you are, if you're really going to accept that, Kyson, I then had to start looking at my shameful past, which is Mormonism for me. But everybody's got that thing in their back closet that they don't really wish was part of them, and they don't want to talk about it. And I started to make these like videos, these YouTube videos, as like a fun. I started this like 3 years ago, making these YouTube videos, and my first one was about like burnout as a designer, and that's what I started to make 3 years ago. And then I showed it to a friend, and he's like, I think you're having a problem because of your Mormon life. And I was like, no, it's definitely like burning out as a designer. And he's like, all right. And then I made another one, and then at that one I finally got into the Mormon stuff, but it took me 9 minutes into the video before I brought up the word Mormon. And he's like, I think you need to say that in the first 30 seconds to hook people. And I was like, dude, no way am I like leading with that. Like that sucks. And then I just kept making them until now I feel free to do that. And this is the part that I didn't understand before that I do now, is as soon as I started to do that, one, I like the videos, I've made 4 videos, and the last one I did has like 500,000 views right now, which is just blowing my mind.
Wow.
But more important than that, the video is heavy. Like it's really heavy. It goes into the pain. I use the hero's journey framework to help me articulate the moves through the story that I'm trying to tell. But what has become incredibly meaningful to me is I have received hundreds of emails from people sharing with me the most heartfelt, vulnerable, painful experiences of their life, and then thanking me for sharing mine because they feel less alone from that. I had a couple email me and say that they were really struggling in their relationship. They've been married for like 8 years and were looking at getting a divorce and working through that. They watched my video, and then the husband realized that he had some trauma from his Mormon mission experience that he had never worked through. And then when I described my symptoms of complex PTSD, he recognized himself in that too, began therapy. And now they're like, oh, we thought this was just like a personality clash, but this was actually something bigger. And they began to heal. I had people write and say like, hey, I served a mission for the Mormon church 30 years ago. And I realized that when I watched your film, I cried for the first time in 30 years about it. I've never grieved that experience. And your art moved me. And what has shifted in me is like, I before could never have felt a connection to climate change and my art as a Mormon. And now I do. And it's hard to articulate why that feels related, but it's this feeling of like, if all of us could get free of running from our shame and our trauma, we then can do things that can make our world better. But as long as we're like avoiding that and just grinding and hustling, we're never going to change anything. We're just going to keep recycling the cycles of pain that just keeps perpetuating endlessly. Like, not to invoke the name of Donald Trump, but that dude's in pain. There is some pain in that man that is immense and is big, and he is using it to ruin so many lives. And I think that's probably true of a lot of politicians, a lot of executives, anybody with power. Probably something is like propelling them forward to a level that's like not proportionate to other humans. And like, you know, you meet some old person at the beach that's like chilled out and they've integrated their pain, you know, they've worked through it and they've got some wisdom that's there. Like, they're not doing what an 84-year-old Donald Trump's doing to the globe. And so that's where I've stopped, sold my Rivian, which was hard for me.
Oh, wow. That's
Rivian,
deal.
well, I was making this like $800 a month payment so that I can feel morally good about driving a clean vehicle, because I think it's the solution. And then I finally had to accept, like, dude, you're gonna be imperfect, and you're just gonna have to live at some point. And we sold the Rivian and bought this like old Sprinter van that has like bunk beds in it, and we're going to Zion National Park with our kids next week, and we've been to Big Sur with them, and I love the van. It has a key start, and it has no fancy things. I ran over my kid's bike. I've like, because it has no camera in the back, and my brain just like turned off from driving the Rivian around. So like, I ran his bike over. I've like left the lights on like 3 times, and the batteries died. I had it plugged into the wall with like an outlet to charge the battery in it for camping, and I didn't realize it was plugged into the wall, and went driving away and ripped it out of the outlet. And so like, driving down the road with the extension cord, you know, behind me, and everybody's like honking. And so like, it has no whistles and bells, and yet I'm suddenly like, I'm alive in a way that I wasn't before, and I'm free. And I don't know, like, I can't quite tell if I'm majorly bypassing right now, or if I'm actually like, I'm accepting just reality as it is, and then I'm free to like go and create. And I think it's the latter, because it's coming back to me from other people saying like, your freedom is allowing me to feel things that I didn't know I needed to feel before. And if that means that for like the rest of my life I need to make like Mormon centric art, like, that's fine. It's maybe a smaller life and less change than I had hoped for when I was aspiring in my idealism, but it's actually like a change that I can do, where the other ones I couldn't do. It was delusional.
Yeah. Well, and you just get to, that's the beauty of that process, is you get to just let it evolve as it does, and can relate. I just sold my car last week, and I bought a Ford Econoline 1996 Yeah, and I'm so excited about it. Like
Isn't
I
that funny?
felt some obviously I felt some reservation,
Yeah.
but I recently they just passed a new law in Canada where you can apply for citizenship by descent if you have ancestry.
Uh,
And we have, you know, French Canadian,
did
like,
you say citizenship by descent?
uh-huh.
Oh, like as in like lineage.
Yes,
Okay, I
exactly.
thought you meant like I'm dissenting from this
Oh,
system. And I
yeah.
was like, oh, that is so punk rock, but
Yeah.
no.
I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
but no, I like this conversation because it's challenging me to, because I'm in the throes of this, like, where's the balance kind of thing.
Mm.
I just have in my head, like, I mean, and this has been a vision for a while where I want to end up is just like on a piece of land that's close to a hub, close to an ocean, within driving distance, and that I can garden and that I can make art. And in order to do that, I need to, you know, I'm not taking off the table that I will again make money someday. I just don't know what money's going to look like in the future. That's my honest assessment.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel like with everything being so uncertain, my only goal is to just create some level of like control within my own environment, which means buying a van and going on a 6-month road trip across Canada and trying to figure it out
Yeah.
there, and like part of me feels like, oh my gosh, I don't want to, I don't want to live in a van, like in a small space for 6 months. And then part of me is like, this feels the most freeing I've felt in a really long time. And to your point, like it has a cassette tape, a cassette
Yeah.
player. And the old owners left all their cassettes in there. So I've got like the Doobie Brothers, this like Hawaiian music,
Oh,
and
that's
just
awesome.
like it's giving me so much peace because it's just like, oh, it's so simple.
Yeah.
You just like there's not a lot to this, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I can handle this, So
Yeah. And you're
funding,
freeing yourself of carrying the responsibility of the whole system not being
right?
ideal.
Yeah,
Which is hard to do because it's not ideal and it is causing suffering.
yeah.
And yeah, you have to like, I say you, I mean me and maybe you too, but it's like this, it's accepting like this duality that you don't want to look at. Like, is there suffering? Does it suck? Is it
Mm-hmm.
problematic? And should it be changed? Yes. Am
Mm-hmm.
I alive? Am I actually free? Is my freedom actually the biggest rebellion against the systems causing that suffering? Yes. And like those two things don't need to be in conflict with each other. Like just because there is suffering doesn't mean that I should wake up every day overwhelmed with the suffering of the world, because that's how they get you. Like if I'm in
Mm-hmm.
that state, I'm not ever going to be able to, I'm still in their game.
Yeah.
I'll use the Mormon analogy again because it's so easy for me to work with now. It's such like a Truman Show type world when you're a
Mm-hmm.
Mormon. Um, when I first began deconstructing Mormonism, I really wanted to create I wanted to create this magazine that I was going to call Other Sheep, that referred to like the black sheep of Mormonism. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be a magazine that will like, it'll be a magazine and a podcast, and we'll like interview nuanced Mormons, and we'll try to find ways to make the church better so that LGBTQ people that are committing suicide at a really high rate here can feel accepted and belonging. And I was trying to change that world to work
Mm-hmm.
at a higher plane than it was operating in. And it didn't work. Like those were just delusions that I could do
Mm-hmm.
any of that. And I actually had to like just leave it, just be like, it's
Yeah.
just gonna do its thing. And the more free I am, the more petty it looks. And the
Mm-hmm.
people that watch me experience a version of freedom that they've never experienced themselves will start to question way more than some magazine that allows for nuance and logical thinking and philosophy. And so
Yes.
I kind of feel the same thing about like what we're experiencing as culture is like your freedom to go cruise around in a van for 6 months and just explore, like hold that, like what Rilke says, like, or Rumi, I think it's Rumi, Rilke, maybe Rumi or Rilke, I never can remember which one, but he says like, we got to just live the question. Like, don't look
Yeah.
for the answer, but live in
Yeah.
that question. That is an affordance that capitalism doesn't give us. It wants an answer and it wants a fix. And so you're going to say, no, I'm not going to fix it. And I'm not going to provide the answer in a framework that just has it dialed in. And if you do these 7 steps, then we're all good. Like
Yeah.
there's some power that's there. And there's also there's such an energy in that state of not being, it's like the cliffhanger. You know what I mean? Like when you watch a show and it ends on a cliffhanger, you're just like, oh, like the trajectory just starts moving in that like forward direction. And
Yeah.
so when you resolve it, it's done. Like the
Yeah.
energy, the story is over. And I think we're not over right now. And so
No.
why are we rushing to conclude it with like the right solution? Like, let's just let that cliffhanger just pull us like all the way through this thing.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to suck, but like, again, to like nature, everything, like childbirth, like I watched my wife give birth to 2 children. It sucked, like horrible. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed in my entire life.
Yeah.
And that dichotomy is going to get more and more sharp as this like culture goes through this, whatever birth canal we're passing through right now. It's just going to get like Terrence McKenna says, like weirder and weirder as it gets in. It's going to get heavier and heavier. There's going to be more probably pain and destruction before we pop out. I don't think we've crossed that threshold yet where it reached its like tipping point, because we're all still watching it and we're observing, and we have moments like when the George Floyd murder happened and everybody suddenly was like between the pandemic plus the murder, like we all became alive with and animated with like a forward momentum. But it was like our first big contraction. You know, maybe our first big one was in the 60s, and then in this, like now it's like the second big one. These contractions are probably going to get closer and sharper and bigger until it like flops us through to something else. And hopefully we survive that passage. And if we don't, like, oh well, we're going to die anyways at some point. So it just might as well be that.
I know. And that's kind of, I mean, I just flinging myself out into the open road is kind of like, well, what better things do I have going on? You know, like this seems like a pretty good time. And it is bringing to life. Like I do have this adventure piece that's been dormant for a while, because I've been struggling through, like last year was really hard. Just, I mean, again, I was with it mentally, but just, I was like, fuck, this is like a big shedding, and it's hard and it's intense and I'm not having a good time, you know? So like, just this feeling of like, I love that feeling, the open road. I do have some anxiety about traveling by myself, but I'm just like, well, what am I going to do? Just be in a box my whole life, you know? And it feels like it's interesting. Like it's 2 sides of capitalism, like, and it's also 2 sides of this feeling of like, my consistent feeling throughout life is that I'm an orphan. And I'm like, well, being an orphan has its upsides. You can pivot and just do this thing, you know? So I'm like integrating on that level. And then it's the same with capitalism, where it's like part of the reason I'm in this position and I have to figure out how to, you know, make money on the road. And I haven't figured that piece out, but I'm just like, the momentum is with this. Like as soon as I started like moving in this direction, so many things started picking up speed that I was like, I'm just going to go where the momentum's going. And
there's some aliveness that's there in it.
Right. Exactly. And it's just like, I'm like in this position because I kind of have, I'm not going to say I failed at capitalism, because I've had some successes there, but like
you psychologically failed at capitalism. I think that's a fair badge of honor.
I guess I'll take it. Do I get a pass?
Yeah, you get a badge. Here's your diploma of failing at capitalism. Congratulations.
Put on my like gimp gear or whatever. But you know, so it's kind of like 2 sides of the same coin. It's like, because I feel like I haven't quite gotten capitalism, like I haven't quite mastered that game, I can do this other thing. But then, you know what I mean? But then it's also like, so I don't know. And it's just, we all, I think, are going to have to work through our own dichotomies of where are we finding life? You know, what's life giving, and where's the like, that's why I keep coming back to this. Like, it's really just a relationship issue, you know, like, where's your relationship feeling? Where's your relationship with the earth and your environment feeling the most nourishing and life-giving? Because like, we shouldn't have to settle on that, even if we feel really limited in our choices. It's easy to do, but you know, kind of like, and I think this conversation is like a nice catalyst for, I'm really trying to gear out of fear and urgency and like, we got to get going, guys, you know, and I don't know, and I don't have control, and I'm just going to try to, I know that we need to work together, and that's about all I know. And like, that would be my definition of community at this point, is like, how are we working together?
That's beautiful. Yeah. There's something that's freeing in the way that you just described that too. if I contrast that with how you probably described those same ideas at the beginning of our call, they're a little more academic sounding, and philosophical, and just to be like, we just kind of need each other and we need to help each other. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, like that is what we need. And thank you for making that so accessible to me to work with. I know you're a writer too, so you care about words. So I'm sure that
Mhm.
it's interesting, like to look at. Can I there's as you were talking about your trip that you're considering doing and stuff, there's a poem by Mary Oliver that I have like as a sticky on my desk. And
Oh
can I
yeah.
read you just part of it? Because
Yeah, of
it
course.
really moves me. Um, she says she's the one that wrote the poems that, like, for anybody that doesn't know, like the famous one of like, this is your one precious life. You know,
Mhm.
how are you gonna live your one precious life?
Mhm.
Um, this one's called The Journey. And she says, one day you finally knew what you had to do and begin. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough and a wild night and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own. And that voice kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save.
Mm. Yeah.
That concept is like what has freed me, is recognizing, like, Kyson, the only life that you're going to save is your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you've got to, like, what did you love as a child that you don't do anymore? What have you always dreamed of doing that you're too afraid to do?
Yeah.
What do you know is accessible to you, but for some reason, something in you isn't integrated enough to allow yourself to have that? You can see other people doing it. You know it's possible, but
Mhm.
something in you is blocking you from experiencing that abundance that you know is there, because you have evidence everywhere that it's there.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is the only life that I actually can't save.
Mhm.
And once I like accepted that, because that means I have to accept like all of my bullshit that I tell myself, all of my traumas that I don't want to integrate. I don't want to be a Mormon content creator, Melissa, like at all. Like I will go like down kicking and screaming that I do not want to talk about that online. I want that to be a thing I work through and it's just gone.
Yeah.
Um, but what I do want to do is I want to achieve that like highest aim of art. You know, I want people
Yeah.
to experience this connection to the divine mystery and that life that's in all of us, that aliveness that I see when I'm in the redwoods and in nature. I know that I'm not separate from that and it lives in me.
Mhm.
And if that means that I need to talk a little bit about some Mormon stuff so that
Mhm.
they can feel that and I can feel that too, like, no big deal. Like, let's talk Mormon stuff. It's fine.
Yeah, totally. Because
Yeah.
you're also like burning off a layer, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like you don't get to the really good
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
until
Totally.
you have like a lot of drafts and whatever. And
You're
like
right.
you just might, you might be able to, I'm not trying to prescribe anything, but it's just like we just never know how these like threads are going to end up showing up, or like you could reframe it in such a way that actually starts to feel like you're like, oh, this is cool. Like
Yeah.
I've now taken something that I have wanted to leave behind and I've owned it in such a way that I've
Right.
been able to present it. And I
Right.
think like, there's something really freeing about just being like, fuck it, I don't care what people think. Like
Right.
I kind of did that exercise on LinkedIn for a while and maybe I still do, but like I'm just gonna say what I think. And I know it's not, sitting well with a lot of people, but it feels so good to just not.
Yeah.
I like that specific platform because I'm saying all the things I'm not supposed to say,
You
and
are. Yeah.
that makes it, you know, not, there's consequence with that, but I will take the consequence because it's given me such a sense of like, I've really been able to like exercise my voice. And now I kind of feel like ready to kind of
Just let it
leave that
go.
behind. And I'm
Yeah.
like ready to take that exercise of like, just, I will get like 0 to 1 likes on a lot of my posts. And I love that exercise of being like, I don't care. You can like or not like this. I just
Mhm.
feel like I need to say this. And like now I'm going to take that exercise of like those reps and I'm going to put it over here into something that maybe is a little bit more nourishing to my soul. I'm going to now compost it so it,
Yeah. Beautiful.
it actually is like not just being a troll as a content
Yeah.
strategy.
It's like a form of performance art in a way when you frame it like that. Like, I'm going to pretend like I'm doing the LinkedIn thing, and it's not going to follow your guys' rules, you know? What if, I relate with that. And I that's how I've kind of treated Instagram and LinkedIn as well mentally.
Uh-huh.
I kind of think, like, here's a challenge I'm giving myself. I kind of think I'm above it. Like, I see
Uh-huh.
all the normies on LinkedIn announcing their promotion, and I'm just like, you idiots. Um, and I'm wondering how much of that is still my like shadow and that villain part of me that I haven't integrated all the way.
Mhm.
Because like, let's take Instagram, for example. I look at the way people, like, as soon as you start like thinking about the strategy of how to use Instagram, you just get bombarded with like the 7 hooks to do and like how to do
Right.
this, and like, here's carousels are performing better. And I just look at that when I get it, and it's like, you garbage junk. Like, I'm
Uh-huh.
not following your advice. I'll just post my way, and then my posts get like 30 likes, and it's
Right.
like so minimal. And I tell myself, like, I don't even care. And they're like, bullshit, man. Like, you care. You would love to have an Instagram account with 100,000 followers, because you know that attention is energy, and you can move people, and you could actually create
Right.
some of the change that you're wanting. But you've created, I'm speaking to me, Kyson, you've created these like rules, these moral rules of how
Mhm.
to engage in these places. And those rules are limiting you from achieving your fullest potential. What
Mhm.
if the biggest rebellion against these people could be to play their rules,
Mhm.
knowing that you're playing their rules, and not get caught up in the ego trap of those rules, and
Mhm.
just be like, if Instagram needs like a hook to get you to pay attention to the thing that helps
Mhm.
you get drawn into my platform, so that you can maybe unleash your highest aim of art, so that you can
Yeah.
free yourself, like, I'll
Yeah.
give you the hook. Like, that's
Yeah.
fine. And I haven't quite achieved that yet. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
this is like the ripe stuff that I'm clicking into gear, like in the last like 3 weeks, like lately, of like, okay, like, maybe it's time to play a little bit, like, embrace that villain side of me and subvert it. And like,
Mhm.
when people are like, oh, you're just trying to be an influencer, be like, fuck yeah, I am. Like,
I
influencers can
am.
move things. Like, Miss Rachel just like rescued children from an ICE facility because
Right.
she has a huge social following.
Right.
Like, that is not, that's witchcraft right there. That's her channeling something
Mhm.
strange, drawing attention, pushing people to a thing,
Yeah.
freeing somebody physically from suffering. Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong with aspiring to use attention
Right.
and energy for those types of things?
Yes.
Why do I feel shame when I think about trying to do those types of things on these platforms? I think that's still capitalism, like keeping us all in the boxes that they told you to stay in, you know? Only the Kylie Jenners can be on Instagram
Right.
with the millions of followers doing their thing. And not that I'll ever have a million following, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's a, yeah,
Well, I think
so
it's my answer is always patriarchy, but because it's, you know,
yeah. It's a correct answer in every circumstance. It's easy to throw out
well, I
capitalism and
struggle with
patriarchy.
it, especially in like the outdoor industry of like, you know, having to, if you break code, you are out. You know, that's where I draw a lot of those stories from, is like growing
Mm,
up around the outdoor industry of like, oh, you either get it or you don't, you know? And so I know inner teen is the one typing on LinkedIn. You know, that is my inner teen 100%.
yeah.
And I've just now decided, I mean, I've been kind of working with her for the last year of like, maybe that's not the best outlet for your voice. Like, you don't know on some of these things. But, you know, it's like, I kind of just embrace that whole process. I embrace the inner teen just needs to fucking rail for a
Yeah.
while and
Yeah.
bang some pots and pans. And that's kind of been my attitude the last 2 years. And I'm
I love
like,
that.
gently like guiding her, like, okay, like let's maybe put that energy over here in a place that's a little bit more productive. And in the meantime, like though that's where I draw the biggest story around, like, ooh, if I'm putting myself out there, does this feel cheesy? I'm not going to be like cool or like on, you know, I'm
Mhm.
going against all the brand rules. And I just like, and like, fuck that. That is patriarchy, you
Mm.
know? And like, I am so tired of being bound in by like how I can and can't move in the world by these stupid rules. I'm just not going to do it, you know? And like sometimes to my detriment, but also more often to, I feel more fulfilled in the ability to have my own, claim my own self, and like
Mm.
just hope that at some point that resonates. Like as I weed out the inner, you know, like maybe not weed out, but like as I kind of like correct the relationship between me and inner teen,
Yep.
that will take on a more integrated way. And I will find myself into that like sweeter, sweet spot of the art I'm trying to create. But I'm burning off layers right now. You
Yeah.
know, really
Yeah.
what you're talking about with the Mormonism stuff.
Totally relate to all that. And again, that's where art is God and God is art. Like it's because that rebellion can occur through an artistic medium. Like it can occur, everybody has to go through a version of rebellion as they start to integrate themselves, because there is that like wild teen that never got to like express itself. It's actually a funny trope in Mormonism that when people leave, they change their appearance like 5 times before they land on who they are.
Wow.
I totally did it too. Like I grew my hair out down to my shoulders. I pierced my nose. Like I've got friends that like go hurry and get like a bunch of tattoos to like try to rebel against this identity that they had before. And then often as you start to integrate and like 7 years later, 10 years later, as you settle, you're like those tattoos are good memories, but like I don't really feel like I need to have a tattoo up my arm to like feel like I'm okay in the world. Nothing's wrong with tattoos, by the way. But I guess like there's art gives you a medium where you could say, I'm going to rebel and channel all that energy with a level of awareness of what I'm doing. Because in Mormonism, sometimes you watch people that like they leave, and then when they're losing meaning, they like will have an affair or blow up their family, or like there's the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives that it's on TV right now. It's kind of everywhere on social media, and these women are wonderful case studies in how to like not develop that inner teen and then let it all out when you're like 28 years old and you've got 3 kids already. And so art is just like a beautiful form to like work with that energy. And then it's an acceptance too, that like that whatever you're going through right now is the material that you need to express yourself. Like there's no resolution that you need to have before you can create from this place, because when you can tell me that like I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, I'm thinking about doing this thing and I don't know if it's the right aim, but I want to do good in the world and I see the problems, but I don't know what to do. I am over here suddenly like freed of like, oh, me too, Melissa, like I'm human too, and we both find ourselves in this weird situation in 2026 to be a human on this planet. And thank you for telling me that, and thank you for choosing like the medium of podcasting as like your platform to create your art in. Yeah, like it somehow art to me, the word art just keeps coming up for me like so much right now. And art is matriarchal, it's expressive, it's life-giving, it moves you on a plane that's different both for the creator and the created and the witnesses of it all. It's like what religion was supposed to be before capitalism ruined all religion, it never was supposed to be about money and structure and power. It was always supposed to be about bring people together to create art, to tell stories, to connect with this higher divine mysterious essence of life, or whatever it is. I don't even know what it is.
Like a house for creativity, kind of.
Yeah and like storytelling, like we compartmentalize all of it. Even art is so compartmentalized in the culture that we have today, but like to tell a story is artistic, and to sit around a campfire with your family at the end of a good bison haul, like, and to talk about how the day went was a way of processing things and talking about like, well, this part was painful and this part was hard and I got so tired here, and that's it. And like maybe life's that easy, is just talk about how it is for you as you go about trying to exist. And
just how do we just have more, how do we honor, like how do we create that permission for each other to just have those moments of slowdown? Because I think that is really what feels like, if we're going to talk about the mechanics of why community why it always seems to stay at the surface.
Yeah.
It's like community is actually hard work, like you actually have to be uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. You actually have to work through some things. And if we can just kind of accept, and if we can kind of like bite it off as the adventure that it is, then it just becomes par for the course of like, oh, this is a rickety part of this adventure. But we're doing it because guess what? There's like a huge vista on the other side of this bend or whatever, you know?
And
that's a lot what I think about when I think of like friendships specifically that drift apart. Like that's our go-to mechanism for how to deal with friendships that just, where people just aren't aligning anymore. But there's all this social capital in that friendship that has been built over years and years. And then people just kind of go their separate ways, when there's probably you just need a couple good conversations and you could probably keep that train rolling.
Yeah.
And like, that's what makes me sad about like not instilling these skills as a cultural value, is we miss out on a lot of social cohesion.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. The place where now I'm getting meaning is I need community. I really need community. I can't do this alone anymore.
Right.
And I can't wait for somebody to invite me anymore. And I want a community where people are working on art as a way of staying alive in themselves and as a culture. And as I do that myself, I have been so overwhelmingly surprised by the number of people that want to connect with me, both online and in person, because they want that too.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't need to hide in shame that that's what I want, because everybody wants it. And you're just waiting for somebody to give them permission to go do it too. And that's where it feels a little like performance art, throwing stupid shit up on Instagram, but it's like, just do it. Like people want to be free, and they want to feel like you're free enough for them to open up to. And yeah, so I think that's my new like activism is like just create stuff for yourself that's working through your own stuff, and then find other people to create too. And you'll all just create together. And I don't know what world that's going to build to, and it's okay. I don't need a resolution to get there. Yep. And that's kind of easy. You know, it's hard work. It's still labor to make art. Like I stay up way too late since I've developed this obsession of making films. But I'm alive.
Yeah. And you're actually engaged in what you're doing, you know?
Yeah. And I don't care about my corporate job. But I'm willing to do my corporate job because it allows me to do this thing. And I am as convinced as ever that if I continue doing this thing, I'm growing a garden of things, and they will at some point sustain me, and they will carry me in ways that right now I'm carrying them, and I'm putting in a lot of labor, and I'm planting a lot of seeds. But it's going to grow, and I'm just going to trust that the universe does its thing, and this is how nature works, and it grows. And the main thing is just like, don't bottle up, don't sit on the couch and doom scroll every night, don't get stoned every night and just like think about how bad the world is, because I've tried that route, and it eventually leads to death, you know, like you just slowly die inside.
Yeah. Well, can I offer some feedback of just what I've noticed and sort of like reconnecting with you over the last couple weeks? It's just that, for one, it's like you're visible, you know, like, it's funny because like we didn't really, you know, we kind of knew each other in passing. You helped, you know, open the door at Rivian for me, and then we had a minute where we crossed over, but we didn't really get to work together, and that was you know, I was bummed that we didn't have a chance to actually work together. But then
this is the longest conversation we've ever had before, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And but I just knew, I was always like, I just like Kyson. Like I feel like he's, you know, he's a good guy, and like I always appreciate your sharings and things like that, but I was like, oh, he's in the background, you know, and like, so I just am seeing your presence come forward, and it's just like you're just turning your light on, you know. And
it's
like
not cringy, Melissa, like, because I feel so cringy like every day. I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
No, that's what I'm saying, is like the feeling is not cringe, the feeling is relief. I'm having a feeling of relief for you, and I'm also connecting with what you're saying, and I'm so relieved that like even just reaching out, I just felt safe to reach out, whereas like I actually don't know that I would have before, because it was my imaginary wall of like, oh well, Kyson's over there, he's cool, and like he probably would be nice if I reached out, but he's like, you know, whatever. And it's not like I even thought about it. I saw your content pop up, and I was like, oh, well, he seems open. And so he'd be open to a conversation. So it was more of that. It's like, just when you turn your light on, people are like, oh, there you are.
Right.
You want to do something? Or I don't know, you know,
and it sucks.
It feels safer to do that when people aren't looking for, when there's not like a script to follow, which is again, what I find a lot. Found, I don't know as much anymore in the outdoor industry because I'm not as connected in there, but like that always was what it felt like, is that you have to say the right thing to get in the door, to have the relationship. And it's like, when you get to drop all those things, then you get to attract genuine people that really want to connect with the material that you're putting out.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? And you know what the irony of that all is, and this is an irony that I was blind to before, since, and this is a short-term experiment that I've done, but since making myself visible online, I've had several outdoor brands reach out and be like, we want to collaborate with you.
Nice.
You're speaking in ways that we feel too, and we just don't know how as a brand to talk about these things, because brands can't put themselves in human conversations because it's not genuine. It never will come across as genuine. They can find humans to highlight, but brands can't go here, because we run into the end of this era of brands being our social activists.
Right.
We're done with it. Like, you put your pride flag up and we don't give a shit. Like, it doesn't matter to us anymore. We don't believe in it. You want to tell us that you're like, your clean energy company is going to save the planet, Elon Musk? Like, bullshit. You want to tell us, Sam Altman, that AI is going to create this like utopia where none of us have to work anymore? Like, I'm sorry, I don't believe you anymore. And that is a freeing feeling to get to. And so then what that leaves is like, well, then who is going to be the champion of that? And it's like, it's the same people that it's always been. It's always been the humans. Like, imagine if, I don't know, like Geico was championing Martin Luther King's message, you know, like, it's like, no, like Geico isn't the activist. It needed a person with pain and real human experience to come out there and say, like, this is the world that I envision us to get to. And I keep being surprised that, like, the more I'm willing to put myself out there, the more out there is like meeting me like directly back. And it's weird. It's like startlingly weird. And but it's also like so exciting. Like, I'm just riding a high right now, not from the ego of being seen, but just the feeling that so much of this is mental, and it's my mental, and not to get into like, it's the Matrix and it's a simulation and I'm controlling the world, because I'm not delusional enough to think that yet. But there might be a little more hermetic truth in all of this existence than I like to like be comfortable acknowledging, because it is weird. It's like freaky, weird synchronicities just start happening.
Yes. And that's kind of how you know you're in that sort of like right relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because then it starts to reflect in that way. And I just love, like, you know, I love moving on. I'm so glad we're moving on from like the heavy hardcore brand era. Like, not that there's not a place for brand, but it's just, that was what drove me crazy about living in California, is that it was a second language, and it was how people navigated. So even in these like, you know, more left or liberal circles, you're still like discounting people because they're not polished in this certain way. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing, you know, you're not able to like connect with their humanness. And so it's just like, there's a place for brand, and I'm so glad that we're like letting go of some of the trappings of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. The days when we used to think Tom's shoes was gonna like save the world, like it's almost like embarrassing now to like be like, what were we? Why? Yeah, remember like Tom's shoes? It was like Tom's shoes, Invisible Children, that like Coney 2012 stuff was like a big thing in that era.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of brands that were, yeah, I'm glad we're over that too.
You like the way, like, looking at people's Instagram, and if it's, you know, not
too branded,
right, and maybe not even like branded intentionally, but if it doesn't have the right visual cues, I have to say, like, I've been living with my brother and sister-in-law, and they just don't care about that stuff at all, and it's so refreshing. It's just like, okay, we can just connect as people, and like we have more of the heart center stuff in common, and like there's so many like random moments of comedy, and just like, or you know what I mean, like like,
I wonder all the time who is building I always wonder all the time who is building something that's not on the internet, and they're actually creating change, because I wouldn't know about it at all, and that actually might be the point. And what could I build that nobody needs to know about too? Why do I have to turn everything into some digital expression of art? You know, what about, like, am I brave enough to let that go? You know, maybe that's the like the Luke trust the force thing. Like, take it off, put it down, and just trust it. Like, you're not, the feeling that I have to have an Instagram and I've got to play this game in this way is maybe even a feeling of my lack of faith in surrendering that art and nature is actually everywhere, and it's even in the material that makes up my phone, and it's even in AI, and it's even in whatever cyber sphere we're talking in right now. All of this is nature, and I don't quite trust that yet, but I hope to get there, that I can, and just like surrender that it's all going to just do what it's doing. It's just a big cycle that's going around.
Yeah. And the more you polish your signal, that kind of feels like where the brand conversation is going. Is like the more you polish your signal from the inside, the more you're just creating more resonance. Like, again, brand almost falls off to the wayside, because it is important. There's an essence there, and I don't want to discount that, but I just want to say, like, there's so many people that don't. I would look past them if I was just evaluating them on their, like, on the brand aesthetic, and then I'm missing out on so many awesome people and so many awesome lessons and so many reflections back that I never would learn about myself if I didn't engage with different people that don't come across in a certain way,
Totally.
Which is, I think, what brand is.
Yeah. I would say, like, as a brand identity designer, I think a lot about brand, and I would say the best brands are beyond an aesthetic. They have, I talked about this in the latest video that I made, but they have 3 aspects to create a feeling of meaning. They have a myth, an aim, and a path. So I'll use Nike as an example. Nike's myth is that you will achieve something, some like Nike Pegasus God-like experience through athleticism. And their path to get there is like sports and running and competition and aggression. Just do it. Don't think about it. Just go. And the aim, or the myth is that, actually their myth is that everybody's an athlete. That's the myth, is that everybody's an athlete, everybody can get there. And here's your aim. Here's your shoes to go do it. Here's the athletes that are doing it. And so what they are doing is, when you have those 3 pillars working together, Nike feels meaningful. And in our stupid, silly human monkey brains, we look at Nike and we're like, I love that brand. And we don't even know why we love that brand. Apple does it too. Tesla does it. Every brand that is successful at connecting with a certain demographic and creating a cult-like following is using those 3 mechanisms, whether they're aware of it or not. So when I think about, if you were to compare, say, 2 Instagram accounts and the way that people are presenting themselves, they could both be aesthetically pleasing, or they could both be not aesthetically pleasing. The aesthetics to me don't matter as much. The thing to look at is, how effective are they at articulating their myth, their aim, and their path? Because when they do that, then you will land on their stuff and feel like it's meaningful to you. You'll connect into the story. You'll understand how the story works and what they believe in. And it's doing the same thing that a Nike does. And it will create like a cult-like following behind what you're doing. As somebody that's lived in cults, I have a shadow side that I'm like, don't go recreate the thing that you are trying to avoid in yourself. But I've also got that villain side that I want to work with, and be like, don't avoid doing that. Be like, if you know how it works and you can see the mechanism and you could use it to help people, as long as you're not ever claiming to be an authority that knows more about somebody than they know about themselves, as long as you're never taking advantage of them when they're unaware of the advantage that you might be taking on them. Like, there's some kind of these rules that would maybe be a fun exercise to like write down and be like, these are the things I will never do. And like, I'm going to make that public. And if you see me do that, call me out and cancel me so fast.
Or just gently, some feedback.
If I ever tell you that I am Jay Shetty and that I lived in a monastery when I didn't, I've started like making up stories and like all these lies to make me look like I'm important in the world, or fucking Deepak Chopra doing his bullshit while also being in the Epstein files. Like, that's when the guru has gone bad. But I like, I was in this meditation class and
wait a second. Because don't you think if Deepak Chopra was like, you're right, it's time, like, okay, it's time to look at this honestly, like that. I think we need to make space for people to
also like apologize and work through it publicly and stuff,
just like fully own who they are if they're at that place,
as opposed to cancel and ignore.
Right, exactly. I'm not saying, in the minority, most people won't do that. I'm just saying, like, we should hold the door open for people when they reach a certain place and they get called out to be like, oh, this is worth looking at. And like, I'm actually going to do the hard work on this.
Yeah. That would be that'd be so fascinating to witness. I'm trying to think of if I've ever seen that happen publicly. I would say the closest I feel like I thought I saw it happening for a minute was Russell Brand. And then he went like all the way back around, and then like became hardcore Christian and joined the whole MAGA thing. And I was like manipulating people with fake news. I'm like, dude, you were so close. Like you went through your spiritual transformation and you got clean from drugs, and his ego must love the spotlight. And I guess the part of me that's villainizing him must love the spotlight too. And so I look at that and like, oh, you icky man. And but I took this right after I left Mormonism. I took this meditation course from this guy that I like loved his work, but I could not let myself like relax in the class because I was so afraid of trusting another authority figure that was teaching me spiritual things and then being harmed by that. And during a Q&A thing, I actually opened up and shared that fear. I was like, I can't quite trust anything you're telling me because I don't want to get hurt. And he's like, I loved it. It was just like, well, so it sounds like you've been hurt before. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, and you don't want to be hurt again. I was like, correct. And he's like, so you're watching for when you might be falling into that trap. I was like, yeah. And he's like, then you're right where you should be. I was like, oh. He's like, that doesn't mean you don't have to like engage with the world anymore for fear of ever getting hurt again. It just means like you've learned the hard lessons. And when you start to feel in your body that you're like violating something within yourself, or you're not holding your boundaries that you should be holding, because I had all those signals as a Mormon growing up, and I just overrode them and trusted this figure over my own intuition. And I just appreciated his like championing of when you've crossed that line and when you haven't. And I kind of think the same way about using social media and putting your message out there online and trying to get people to follow you and trying to sell things to people of like, when you're being a little like manipulative with your marketing copy or your design language to get them to click the CTA. And
or even more than that, like I went through a cycle of, because going down the coaching path has been part of this little adventure. And I still validate it. Like I still think coaching, I actually kind of think everyone will be a coach someday, but we don't have to call it that. We can call it facilitator of some experience or skill. And like
apprentices and mentors and like,
which is a total normal way which is a wholesome way to relate. But like,
that's how all of society actually worked previously.
Right.
Before capitalism.
Right. We like trade is not a product of capitalism. Trade has been around since humans existed. It's just, that's another layer. But
it is.
I did go through like a cycle of like, I took a couple coaching programs, tried to learn the game, and there was something that wasn't right about it. And it just wasn't clicking. It wasn't working. I put it on a shelf for a while, maybe like 6 months or a year. And then because I was like, I don't even know if this is like what I should consider doing, even though I really cared about the subject matter, which is relationships.
Yeah.
But I wasn't feeling quite genuine about it, and it was annoying me, and I needed to just make money in another way. So I focused on that. And since about the beginning of the year, I've come back to it, but I've come back to it from just a completely different place of like, I'm not going to follow anyone's rule book or playbook, because every time I've done that like 3 times, like trying to take advice of other people, all well-meaning, all, some probably better qualified than others. And not to say I haven't learned things from them, but at the end of the day, I was just like, I just have to do this the way that I feel intuitive about it. And like, I don't care if that means that I'm not going to grow a huge following or whatever. It feels better to me to just do it in the way that is intuitively feels good.
Yeah.
And like I got somebody like who reached out, just found me online by, Googling the combination of words I have used. And I was like, that's how I want to get a client,
Yeah.
I just want them to find me after I've put in a lot of work to polish my signal.
I like that. Yeah.
It's
like
a slower road, but I'm willing to take the slower road to feel like I have a little bit more integrity behind it.
I think that's the beauty of the internet. As much as I like hate some of the experiences we're having in this modern world, the abundance that exists because of the internet is hard to comprehend. That there's like 8 billion people here on the planet, and you need 100 of them to support you in order for you to have all of your financial needs met.
Yeah,
like that's like incredible. Like you could sew aprons and find 100 people that like. And I think the trick to get there, and this is literally like the social experiment I'm doing on myself right now. I have a belief that I had a belief for a long time that I was too weird, my
Mm.
story was too cringy, and that
Mhm.
nobody wanted to hear me, and that I needed to be like those types of people in order for me to be loved and accepted and find belonging and make art.
Who
And
are
then when
those people? Can I ask?
I don't even like, yeah, like it's just like the cool creative directors at fun
Yeah.
companies, and like I needed to shoot photos for like this type of a brand, and I needed to like,
Mhm.
working for Rivian was like the biggest ego thing I'd ever experienced in my life, and I did well at Rivian. Like I will never complain about that, but it was like I wasn't fulfilling for me. Something in there was like yeah, Rivian's a cool flower that's blooming, and I'm putting all my energy into blooming that flower, but I'm a seed over here that is ready to bloom, and the more I'm
Mhm.
resisting that, the more I'm just going to suffer. And so when I accepted that like all of me is exactly what I need to
Mhm.
create the signal that I need so that I can attract the abundance that is my birthright.
Right.
Um, and that means all of me, like the parts I hate, the parts that I don't even know exist that drive my actions. So that's why
Mhm.
I'm working with this like creative coach that's doing shadow work. I'm also in somatic experiencing therapy. I've been voraciously reading and studying for like the last 5 years because I'm like, I
Mhm.
need to, whatever has subconsciously been driving my life, it has done a terrible job and it's ruining things. And I got to figure out who that is and try to work with that material. And
Yeah.
I don't,
As we all do.
as we all do, yeah.
You
And
know?
then what I could feel coming is as I watched AI start to come online, AI doesn't have life experience. It doesn't have a perspective. It doesn't have pain.
Mhm.
It can replicate the feeling, the words of pain, but it
Mhm.
doesn't have that anguish to go through. And I think when a poet writes a poem, it's not the rhyming of the words that connects with you. Something
Mhm.
energetically is happening there, and you're connecting on like a different plane. And it's
Yeah.
because of when Mary Oliver says this hyper specific phrase that she realized she finally left her home and did the work that she knew she had to do. And then she realized that she's had this voice in her head, and it was her voice all along, and hers is the only life she can save. Something in that, like you and I both nod our heads, like, oh yeah, she's speaking.
Mhm.
Those are my words, actually. It's not Mary Oliver's words. And
Mhm.
that,
But there's a connection there. Like
yeah,
it lands.
exactly.
There's
It's
a
like
thread, you know?
in the particular of Mary Oliver's experience, I find like a universal thread that is my experience too. And
Mhm.
and then I tried to do this experiment of say, Kyson, get hyper particular about your unique, weird experience. And then when
Yes.
I did, all these people connected with me and are like, dude, I didn't grow up Mormon, but I connected with what you said. And it's like, how is that possible? That is weird. And I don't know what's happening there, but I'm kind of ready just to keep getting more and more like naked in public and just be like, here I am, like, look at this.
Yeah.
And I'll do it in an artistic way. And if it's ever coming out too chaotic, I'll maybe slow down and just like work on it a little more so that it doesn't cause harm to me or to the people around me.
Yeah.
But I think if that's the work of my life for the next 60 years of my existence, like I will die like a very happy person. And
Yeah.
that is something that I did not have a year ago, even.
Oh,
That's
that's
like a
awesome.
new insight. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. I definitely I resonate with a lot of that, and just the um like, what else are we really here for
Yep.
except for, and I just think of it like, why were you born in that family? Why were you born in that particular, like there's reasons for all of these places that we've landed
Yeah.
spiritually, and we don't have to put them in a hierarchy. We can just simply be like, well, why? I do think there's a spiritual component of like, what is my spirit here to learn? It's putting me in this like dynamic because I'm supposed to be learning something. And so when we kind of just can always pull on that thread,
Yep.
we really don't need the validation from, we can be as cringy as we want, and it's so freeing.
It is. Yeah. And it gives like what happened to you with your mom sucks like at a level that's so not fair. And what
Mhm.
happened to me with my upbringing and like being the trauma that I faced in Russia or like same things that happened to my parents, like it's like that sucks, man.
Mhm.
And and that is the threshold, that's the doorway that you had to pass to find yourself as another human on this planet. And now that you've passed through it, if you can learn to work with that, you'll find that you can connect with everybody on this planet because you're hitting into something that all of us know and feel, really deeply, which is pain and then the experience of like the beauty that's on the other side of that pain.
And
'Cause-
that you just maybe want to sit on a dock and go fishing.
yeah. Yeah, I love that you keep
I know
bringing
a
that
lot
up.
of
It's
people,
so
I'm like, I
simple.
just really want to make things in all of my spare time, and that feeling of just boiling it down to the basics feels really lush or something.
Yeah,
You know?
lush. That's a great word. Yep. Lush and alive.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel so good talking with you, Melissa.
Well, thanks for taking the time. I know it's a bit of a marathon conversation,
It's easy.
but I
I
just
could
love
do this all day.
I love the availability of the dialogue, and like I probably am not going to edit it. I'm probably just going to run it for as
Yeah.
long as it is, and people can take what they want from it or that kind of thing. So
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for putting the work into exploring and sharing the message that you're grappling with too. And I find it freeing. Like, let's say you had 500,000 followers on this podcast that was like polished and perfect. I actually would be less interested than, because if you had that, then I'd have to come on and I'd have to be performative, and you'd be performative, and we'd be a brand, and we'd be scripted, and there's something freeing about like, I'm not here to become famous. I'm here to create community and to connect with
yeah,
real humans. And so anyways, I just like, I love meeting you in this state that you're in today. And I can't wait to see how it all like develops and unfolds as you just keep going.
yeah, same to you. And I loved the idea when I learned about your second nature,
Mm.
or is
Yeah.
that what? Yeah, the
Yep.
storytelling club. I think that's such a cool idea, and if you're taking members, I would love to be one.
Yeah, we'll see what that turns into. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm toying
Yeah.
with a few ideas. At first, I thought I wanted it to be a membership club, and then I realized that I just don't really want to manage a community.
Yeah.
I'd rather just spend my time making things. So
Yeah.
the newest idea for it is actually, I threw this out to my wife today, and she's like, that is a terrible idea, which is a signal to me that it might be a good idea. um, is to just turn it into a cult, like
Oh,
for real, like an art centric cult where God is art and art is God, and just like lean into the weird esoteric shit of my past of like these Masonic secret handshakes and symbols, and just like go
oh,
s- go so culty with it
yeah.
that it almost is like subversive in how culty it is,
I think that's a good idea, actually.
I don't know what that means. She's like, and then what would you do? Like, are then you collecting members? I was like, I don't know that part yet. I'm a brand designer. I only can think of like how to, I was like, I can make a brand though that would
You can
create some.
show up once a week and facilitate a cult.
I could,
You've
yeah.
got time.
Yeah, facilitate a cult. And I would love to like, wouldn't it be kind of fun just to even like call it that, just like
Yeah.
openly like we are cult members, and create this world building like thing around the irony of openly knowingly being part of like a cult of artists that are trying to like
A cult
overthrow
with
the
no
system
leader.
of oppression. Like, how cool is that? Sign me up for that cult,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of just like having a place to show up and like talk through, like nerd out on the creative process
Yeah.
on a regular basis. Like I do wish something like that existed.
I'm part of that online with a different group right now, and I love it so
Cool.
much. And I'm seeing that the person facilitating it has their unique angle, and they attract their unique people.
Mhm.
And not everybody would fit in that community. And I
Yeah.
also have something unique that I could offer, and not everybody would fit in my community, and not everybody
Right.
might fit in your community. But like, if liberation comes from one at a time, gathering groups of people to create art together that
Mhm.
is deep and aims at our highest ambition, like, and that ends up being the work of my life, like,
Mhm.
I'll do whatever cringy Instagram post I need to do to get that world to birth
Yeah.
into existence. It's fine. So that's kind of where my mental state's at the moment.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say, because I know we could keep chatting, but like think about it. If you're supporting 100 people, like if you support 100 different people, if everybody's supporting 100 different people, that's an economy. And
Yeah.
you have that kind of activity, people become better consumers and better service providers or product providers, whatever. And so it kind of like sophisticates everyone. It elevates the whole culture of like exchange and trade. So it becomes, I just think when you introduce spirituality in like the most pure essence kind of way into commerce, it
Uh-huh.
becomes a completely different thing than capitalism.
I agree.
Like
Yeah.
you still get energy exchange, you still get, even maybe currency and dollars of some kind, and like, accumulating not like huge amounts of wealth, but accumulating some thing that you can work with and
Yeah,
create
yeah.
success with is like when there's like a spiritual basis behind that, it's just a different feeling. And we don't have to, we can.
It's a higher aim than capital. Like
Right,
capitalism's aim is capital.
right,
And that
exactly.
just is so boring.
Mm-hmm.
Like
At
really?
least a lot to be
Yeah.
desired.
Like that's what I'm gonna live my whole life for, is that aim. Like I can
Right.
see the people that have done it and I don't want to be them either. So like what are we, I think that's like the despair that starts to arise. Like
Mm-hmm.
especially as like this younger generation's coming online. Like my son's 11 now and he just kind of like
Mm.
looks at the future and is just like not interested. And I'm like, I don't blame you. Like
Yeah,
I'm not gonna fault you for questioning what's the point of all this, because I think that's actually the right question to be asking right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get a cult started.
Okay,
So,
I'll start the cult. That is such a, oh
just
man.
put it on
There's
your
so,
to-do list.
as I'm working through my villain side of me, I've got this like, I don't know if you know any Mormon history, but this like Joseph Smith and the gold plates, like he was the fucking founder of Mormonism, was a major cult leader and like
Uh-huh.
marrying 14-year-old girls, like multiple, like bad,
Oh,
bad
wow.
stuff. And
Yeah.
I hate that part of my life, that I was connected to that. And maybe the way to overt that is just to like lean
Yeah.
into it, but with an awareness, that you're not, don't
I
be that
think,
guy. But
isn't the definition of a cult like, I mean, you could be a cult with no leader. You're just a
yeah,
facilitator.
yeah.
Because you have to have like a leader that everyone,
Yeah, like the leader claims to like have some sort of divine access that other people don't have. Like some exclusivity has to exist in that
yeah.
cult leader. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't want that. I don't even want to, like, honestly, I just want a community. I want to find, maybe what I should do is just create a community, then find some sort of facilitator, and then I will participate in my own community, because that's what I really want. I just want friends that I'm making art with. I don't care to be seen. I just want to make stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun.
We'll
It's
figure
all
it out.
it's all just fun. It's all just a silly
Yeah,
game. We're just
exactly.
here
I
cruising
do
around in
like
space.
the play on concept though, as a way to kind of invert your experience and
Yeah.
make a joke out of it,
Yeah. I think there's not many people that could do that, like in a way that felt like it connected with the story and the world they're building. And mine, I'm like, I don't know, man. There's, if I could overt the cult thing, it could be kind of fun. Even like the website. Like right now I have the website open and you can get in there and browse and it's all like friendly and lovely. I was like, maybe I just gate it and you got to enter your email to get in and you don't get anything. And it's just like mysterious and almost create these like ritual rites of passage through like a digital treasure hunt, to go to different websites and find different things and
Sounds fun.
make a quest out of it, just make it, just, if life's a game, just like, why are we taking it so seriously? Like, why are we optimizing for the most effective KPI to conversion ratio? Like, why not just take people on this like 3-week excursion of downloading things and catalogs and random podcasts here to like eventually buy a $15 t-shirt? Like, that sounds fun.
I like that.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I like the idea of playing around with sketch comedy just to lighten the mood a bit, to make fun of the things that feel serious. But
yeah. Okay. Well, when you see me,
fun.
when you see me launch the cult, you'll know that it's happening.
Nice.
And I'll be recruiting members and many wives. So kidding. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for pulling this together and for having me on and for talking for so long. Letting me yap for how long have we been going? Like 3 hours? I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll see you on the flip side.
Cool. I'm out now on done 2 podcasts. One's 3 hours and one's 4 hours. And people are going to see me and be like, don't invite that guy. He talks like way too much.
No, it's fine.
That's funny. Okay. Well, you have a good evening. It was great connecting.
Yeah. See you, Kyson.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.